I will be bringing the any torch. Please stand. Pledge allegiance.
One nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Yes. Here. Here.
Hannigan, here, Martinez,
Here.
Turner is absent, McCurdy.
Here. Okay, under announcements, correspondence, do you have anything, Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to inform the planning commission that I will be retiring at the end of this year. I wanted to have an opportunity for early retirement, so this evening, I think we welcome the crowd. I've been doing this for 25 years. And it's a nice way to conclude my public service for two communities. And I can thank this commission and each commissioner, the past commissioners. I'd like to thank the past chairpersons, Cheryl Henning and also Betty Ralston, who also were 10 years chairpersons for previous commissions. So I'd like to again thank this community for having a wonderful opportunity to work in really a wonderful community. And I take great pride in what we as a team have accomplished over 9 years that I've been here. And I'm not retiring per se. I'm moving on to the private development community. I'm looking forward to that next chapter of my life. But again, I'd like to thank each commissioner here this evening. Just to give you an update, we are in the process of really interviewing some really good candidates for the community development director position. So I think hopefully we'll have that position filled, hopefully by the end of this year, maybe before. And I would anticipate that new individual will be here at our next planning commission meeting, either in January and February. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael has always done an outstanding job in putting things together for us for the committee and representing the people for our village and us up here, making it easy for us to do our job. So again, thank you very much for your service. 9 years is much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. Approval of November 6, 2024 Planning and Zoning Board meeting minutes. As presented. Do you all have a chance to read those over? The motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the
No.
Roll call.
Hannibal,
Yes.
Carstensen,
Yes.
Mish,
Yes.
Hannigan, yes, Martinez,
Yes.
McCurdy.
Yes. Motion passes. Tonight, the next item on the agenda is public comment. Now, if anybody is signed up for CarMax, which it looks like everybody on here is for CarMax, we'll be able to take public comment during that process for CarMax. So there's no reason for you to jump up now and have things to say. We are going to switch the order of things. New business is going first. PZB 2414, consideration of a request for special use for a drive-through for 2 commercial outlets, 2 and 3 located on the northeast corner of Route 173, Lincoln Avenue, PIN number 0216106001. So we'll go through that presentation, then we'll go right into the CarMax after that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let the record reflect this is a public hearing being heard according to the public notice, and according to state statute, local ordinances. Mr. Chairman, this matter is coming this evening for a proposed development for the marketplace. As you recall, the marketplace was approved with regards to the first phase of that project, the Kia development. Again, to give you context. Marketplace property is just located west of the Walmart development. And the first phase of that project was the Kia development. That was approved last year. Obviously, we're anticipating the Kia will be opening at the end of this month. The developer is coming in for a special use, a site plan for 3 outlots, a final plan, preliminary and final plan approved this evening. The special use is for 2 proposed drive-throughs that it does require a public hearing. So what we're gonna go walk through this evening very slowly is each proposed outlet for this development. So these are the three outlots which are being proposed this evening. There are three outlots. Lot one is a Valvoline Valvoline oil change facility. Lot two is a proposed retail center, and lot three would be a Chipotle's. So all three outlots would be part of the marketplace development. With regard to context, it's all important because the applicant is requesting a special use. Consider the proposed uses, the context, what surrounds this property. So what this property is adjacent to commercial. Obviously, we have the Kia development. We have commercial to the north, we have commercial to the east, and we have commercial to the south. So this property is surrounded completely by proposed commercial development. So again, the applicant is proposing three outlots. Kind of walk you through. So the first aspect is a special use. There are two findings of facts that must be considered for a special use application. The first fact is a special use will not be injurious or the use and enjoyment of other properties. This property is zoned commercial. The property, in accordance with the village's comp plan, is commercial. There is nothing to indicate that this proposed three outlet development would have any negative impact on the adjacent properties, again, specifically to the west or the east or the south. Again, as you all know, the property to the south is the Petty property or Terry Upton's property, which is planned for future commercial. It's adjacent to Kia. We also have future outlets, which will be part of this development, which I'll walk you through. So there's nothing to indicate that this proposed development would have in any way negative impact on property values. The second aspect is, does the special use comply with the trend of development along the corridor? Again, as reflected, this proposed project is clearly consistent with the trend of development along Route 173. As you all know, Route 173 is a SRA, Strategic Regional Arterial. It's been identified as part of our comp plan as the main commercial corridor in Antioch. Obviously, we have the Walmart, we have the Menard store, our major commercial businesses are along Route 173. So clearly, this proposed three outlet commercial development is consistent with the village's comp plan. It's consistent with the trend of development along Route 173, and therefore we would conclude, Mr. Chairman, that this proposed development has met the two findings of facts that are required for a special use. Again, there's nothing to indicate in any way that these three outlets would have any negative impact on adjacent property values. It's consistent with the village's comp plans that are already identified, consistent with the village's zoning ordinance. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, we are making a favorable recommendation for the proposed special use this evening based on our analysis of the two required findings of facts that are required for special use. The next aspect that's being requested this evening is for what we call a site plan review. As you well know, all new proposed developments are required to go through a site plan review. In that case, we review the actual site plan. We're going to discuss parking. We're going to look at the access points. Then we're going to go into the architecture, and then we're going to also review the landscape plan and photometric plan. And then talk very briefly about preliminary engineering. So let's first look at the plan. Let's look at the three commercial outlets themselves. I want to give you this just brief diagram. This is conceptual to kind of give you context. You can see here that the three outlets that we're proposing are immediately west of the new Kia dealership. Can I walk towards the screen? Sure. So this is the new Kia dealership. As we stated, we anticipate to open in December. The three outlets that we're going to basically discuss this evening are right here between the Kia dealership and Lincoln Avenue. As you know, Lincoln Avenue right now has not been constructed here, but there will be a fully improved intersection at Lincoln Avenue and 173 as part of this development. I'll discuss that later as we get into the transportation improvements. But to give you context, the long-term plan is to have commercial outlets all the way along 173 and potentially another, maybe either big box or dealership, something at the end of this area. But this whole area from Kia to the edge of the property will be commercial. So it's important to give you context so you understand where these three lots are. Now, with regards to the area north of here, this is all conceptual. You know, we're showing some junior boxes here, very conceptual. As of right now, nothing's come through as it relates to the junior boxes. In addition, we showed residential mixed use. Again, very, very conceptual. Nobody has come in for any discussion, either for anything north or frankly, west of what we're talking about this evening. Well, I'll give you the engineer. The main access point will be two access points for these three commercial outlets. The main access point will be an improved roadway with future dedicated turn lanes on 173, which will be Lincoln Avenue. As you know, Lincoln Avenue right now there's really no improved Lincoln Avenue. As part of this development, the overall developer, Brown LLC, will work with the village to actually construct two access roads. There'll be a new Lincoln Avenue, which will connect to an access road, which is located to the north.
Michael, just one question, Lincoln Avenue, is that the access that they have the dirt road going through right now?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Thank you,
So that will be the main access into this overall marketplace development.
thank you.
To give you just a brief synopsis, the future IDOT, and I'll kind of walk you through what the future IDOT improvements will be. IDOT has identified, the good news is that Lincoln Avenue will be a full access. They have also identified that Lincoln Avenue will be signalized when the warrants are justified. As you know, any development has to justify the warrants. You can't just put a signal in there. So once the warrants are justified for the Route 173, there will be a full signalization at this intersection. And I'll walk you through the proposed improvements for Route 173. So that's the main access point. There also will be a full access point at Brown Road. As you well know, Brown Road is now a real road. It's been approved. It's a main access into Kia. So Brown Road will connect to a east-west access road, which will provide direct access into each of these three outlets. So again, access will be through Brown Road and also Lincoln. So that kind of walks you through each aspect. Now, as part of this development, concurrent with this development, the overall developer, Brown LLC, has submitted plans to the Illinois Department of Transportation to improve 173. They've committed to incorporate a through lane with dedicated turn lanes to Brown and also to Lincoln. So there will be dedicated improved turn lanes and basically the acceleration lane on the north side of 173 as part of the overall development. So concurrent with this development, the overall developer for the marketplace, Brown LLC, is required to make necessary improvements on 173. So we anticipate, subject to getting approved, that those improvements will be made concurrent with this proposed development. Now, directing your attention to the actual site plan. First aspect is parking. So we in accordance with the village's ordinance, lot 1, which again is development lane, would require 9 spaces. Would require 4 spaces. Directing your attention to the actual site plan, the applicant has provided 9 spaces of 1 handicap. Therefore, they do comply with the village's required parking requirements. With regards to the proposed retail center, again, the overall resale, the applicants identified approximately a 1,700 square foot retail end cap, which will incorporate drive-through in this retail center. That would require, again, 5 parking spaces per 1,000. Now, the balance of the proposed retail center, approximately 4,243 square feet, has been identified right now for retail. Now, with regards to who's going in there, so obviously we have the applicant, which I'm going to allow the applicant to kind of walk through the tenants they have. I know there's some questions. I'm sure curiosity, who's going to go into the proposed retail center. So the applicant will walk you through the current tenants they have and the letters of intent they have potentially for that retail space. That retail space, again, based on our analysis, require 5 spaces per 1,000 for retail, and for the actual retail space to be 1 per 300 square feet. So that space would require 22 spaces. You actually look at the site plan behind my shoulder, applicants actually submitted 50 parking spaces. So again, as it relates to parking, the applicant has complied with the village's parking requirements for outlot two. Directing yourself to lot three, which again is the Chipotle's with the proposed drive-through. This approximately 2,500 square foot building is based on, because it is a casual dining restaurant, we require 8 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Therefore, 20 spaces will be required based on our ordinance. The applicant is coming before you this evening with 26 parking spaces, including additional handicap space. Therefore, the applicant has complied with the village's parking requirements as it relates to our ordinance. In addition, staff has measured the parking spaces. They do comply with the village's dimensions, and the specific drive aisles are also specifically comply with the 24-foot requirement. Directing your attention, we have 2 proposed drive-throughs. We have a proposed drive-through for the Chipotle's, and we have a proposed drive-through for I believe tropical smoothie, which will be the end cap of the retail building. Both of those drive-throughs, if you actually look at them specifically, we require 4 stacking spaces. Each of these have required comply. So based on our analysis, the Chipotle looks like it would provide 6 stacking spaces. And more importantly, this drive-through for Chipotle also has a bypass lane. So the proposed parking stacking spaces do comply with the village ordinance, and the bypass lane for emergency purposes would also comply with the village's ordinance. Directing your attention to the actual retail center on lot 2, the actual, again, village ordinance requires 4 stacking spaces per lane. This proposed, based on our analysis, this proposed drive-through for this retail building incorporates 7 spaces for vehicles. So again, both lot 3, i.e. the Chipotle's, and lot 2, the retail center, comply with the village's stacking requirements for drive-throughs. Again, to reiterate, the special use was for the drive-through. Now I want to direct your attention to architecture. The first building I wanted to talk about was the proposed Valvoline. The Valvoline structure, which again is lot 1 adjacent to Kita dealership, is being proposed, which complies with the village's architectural requirements as outlined in our site plan review ordinance. To refresh your memory, all buildings for commercial buildings, new buildings, are required to be constructed with a predominance of quality materials, i.e. face brick or stone or glass or some type of fiber cement material. This proposed building is being proposed to be constructed of a predominance of face brick. Now, as you can see, there is some EFS used above the garage doors, which are facing Route 173. There is some incorporation of EFS, which will be for sign band area, and the side elevations also incorporate some EFS. But the predominance of the material is brick. Now, one of the aspects that you'll see that staff did request, because this is within our future commercial corridor, staff did require the applicant incorporate some additional materials to try to incorporate a unified development. As you well know, many years ago, we did adopt the Route 173 design guidelines. And based on those design guidelines, staff wanted to work with the applicant and have some type of design element which would tie all 3 outlots together into a unified development. So based on that, staff did request that the applicant incorporate some cultured stone. As you can see, this revised application has cultured stone facing Route 173. Now that cultured stone will tie into same cultured stone that will be incorporated into lot 2, the retail building, which I'll go into next. But again, this proposed Valvoline oil change facility does comply with the village's ordinance as it relates to the architecture. With respect, we did request some brick pilasters and cultured stone be incorporated into elements adjacent to the building, in addition to the side elevations to kind of break up some of that ethos. That's one small change that we are requesting as it relates to the Valvoline proposal. Direct your attention to lot 2. Again, staff did work with the applicant here. This proposed building was predominant of face brick initially and ephes. You see the ephes is in the parapet area. But one of the interesting aspects that the architect and the applicant has done is he's incorporated some, as you can see, the parapet of this proposed approximately 6,000 square foot retail center. You can see that the parapet varies, so there's some variation in height, which will provide some additional architectural interest to this proposed property, to this proposed building. The applicant did work with staff, and they did agree to incorporate additional cultured stone on the front elevation. And we also have requested that the applicant incorporate some additional pilasters in the rear. You can see the rear of the building itself. There's really mostly predominance of ephes. We did request that the applicant consider incorporating some pilasters of either brick or cultured stone to break up that back elevation. The other concern we had, and I think the applicant has agreed, is to make sure the parapet is high enough to completely conceal any mechanicals on the back of this roof. And I believe that I'll allow the applicant to, address that issue, but I think we're at a resolution for that issue. So generally, again, this proposed retail center does comply with the village's architectural requirements and our site plan review ordinance. As it relates to the Chipotles, this proposed Chipotle is consistent with their corporate store design. A corporate Chipotles does have some limitations in what kind of variation they'll incorporate. Excuse me, as it relates to architecture, this building is being proposed with the predominance of face brick. You can see there is some use of ephes above the parapet area and above the sign band, but this proposed approximately 2,600 square foot building is mostly face brick and obviously glass aluminum storefront system facing Route 173. There is a use of metal paneling for the area along the drive-through. So you can see there's a bump out for the window, for the drive-through window, and the applicant's architect has incorporated some variation of architectural materials that provide some additional interest on what would be the western elevation of this building, which will be facing Lincoln Avenue. So again, the applicant has complied with the village's proposed architectural requirements as outlined in our site plan review ordinance. So again, sum and substance, all three buildings do comply with our village ordinance. Direct your attention very briefly to the landscape plan. Again, because of the village's adopted Route 173 design guidelines, the landscaping of this proposed property is critically important. Staff has worked with the applicant, and this, again, some of the substance, the applicant has incorporated a landscape plan that well exceeds the minimum requirements of the village's ordinance. We wanted to make sure that the landscaping is all tied together, that there's a unified approach towards the landscaping. As you can see in this plan, I will very briefly talk about the number of landscape plants. So the proposed lot one would require 5 trees and 64 the applicant has provided 5 trees and 64 shrubs along 173. In addition, they have provided 20 trees and 300 shrubs or plantings on the side and rear landscape buffer, which again complies with the village's ordinance. Moreover, as you all know, we require 1 landscape item for every 12 spaces. The applicant has complied with that requirement. So landscaping for lot 1 does comply with the village ordinance. Directing your attention to lot 2, which is the retail building. The applicant is proposing 7 trees along facing 173, 98 shrubs, which again complies with the village ordinance. Just to refresh your memory, we require 1 tree for every linear foot of frontage, and we require 15 shrubs of every linear foot of frontage. And therefore, the applicant does comply with that requirement. Moreover, the applicant is proposing 22 trees and 304 shrubs on the side and rear landscape buffer. So they do comply with the village's ordinance as it relates to landscaping. Directing your attention to lot 3, i.e. the Chipotles, the applicant is proposing a total of 6 shade trees and 78 shrubs along Route 173. In addition, they're proposing 22 trees and 310 shrubs, plants along within the side and rear elevations. If you direct your attention to the actual landscape plan, you can see just to the right, there is an index of plantings, which identifies the species of trees, identifies the species of ornamental trees, that identifies the species of the plants. So if you wanted to have any questions as it relates to species, I'll be more than happy to discuss that. And with regards to any questions. Direct your attention to the photometric plan. The applicant, in accordance with the village ordinance, has submitted a lighting plan. The lighting plan, again, in very briefly or in conclusion, does fall within the village's parameters of our site ordinance. All the areas along the property line falls within the 1/2-foot candle illumination level requirement. Moreover, I want to just very briefly talk about each lot. Lot 1, the average foot candle illumination is 1.86, maximum is 4.1. Lot 2, the average, which is the retail center, is 2.13, the maximum is 5. Lot 3, the average is 2.27, maximum is 5.5. But moreover, and more importantly, the foot candle illumination level at the property, i.e. the edge of 173, the northern perimeter inside the eastern and western perimeter are all fall below 1/2 foot candle. In addition, the applicant has agreed to use a unified standard. So there will be a lighting standard, which will be the same standard will be used, which will be very similar to what you see at Kia. The proposed standard will incorporate and comply with the village's ordinance. It will be a box fixture directed 90 degrees down. The lighting fixture will be fully enclosed, so you will not be able to see the light source. So again, in conclusion, the applicant's proposed photometric plan has met the village's requirements. In addition, the applicant has submitted a trash enclosure plan. There are 3 trash enclosures for each individual outlet. Each trash enclosure will be constructed with the same materials or as the predominance of the material used for each building. Therefore, it does comply with the village's ordinance. There will be steel or metal gates. It'll be 100% fully enclosed, and there's landscaping for each enclosure. Therefore, the applicant's proposed trash enclosure plan does comply with the village's requirements. As it relates to preliminary engineering, the overall, as it relates to stormwater, there will be a regional stormwater pond which has been constructed as part of this development to north. So each individual outlet will not have retention. There will be a regional retention and direct your retention. You can see there's been a large regional retention pond constructed to the northern perimeter already. So all the outlets here will drain into basically a planned stormwater pond, which will service the whole site with the exception of Kia. The Kia dealership does have their own retention ponds, but all the other outlets, the water will drain, I believe, to the north into a series of regional stormwater retention ponds. So we can maximize the amount of commercial space along 173. So the applicant is currently working, their engineer is currently working with our engineer, HR Green, on that. So we're reviewing the engineering as it relates to this, but obviously before any approval or any development, the final engineering will be submitted and fully reviewed by HR Green. So right now we're at the preliminary engineering review process. The other aspect is the applicant's required to actually, the developer, Brown LLC, is required to subdivide this proposal. As so you know, there was a previous subdivision of the marketplace property into large lots. So now we're coming into a second re-subdivision of the marketplace. So each outlet that we're looking at has to be subdivided into smaller lots. So lot 1, you're looking at almost 3/4 of an acre. Lot 2, 1.14 acre, which is a retail center. And lot 3 is approximately 0.90 acres. So each you see, you have a preliminary and final plat. So those preliminary and final plats, subject to being approved, those will be recorded, and now we'll have 3 new outlets within the marketplace development. And that's required before this applicant can proceed with development. So, Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, this evening, staff is making a favorable recommendation. We are making a favorable recommendation for special use for the proposed drive-through lanes for lots 2 and lots 3, subject to 2 stipulations. We are making a favorable recommendation this evening with site plan review ordinance, subject to 4 stipulations. And we're making a favorable recommendation this evening for the preliminary and final plat, subject to 2 stipulations. And with that, I'll conclude my staff report. The applicants, I believe the applicants actually here this evening to answer any specific questions that the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, we're gonna start with, the applicant is here. If they can please come up to the mic, that'd be great. Is anybody gonna be speaking to this proposal? If you are from the audience, stand up, be sworn in, and the applicants can be sworn in also.
Raise your hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give in this hearing is factual to the best of your knowledge?
Michael's report, do you have anything to add to that you'd like to run through?
Just a little bit. First of all, Michael, excellent job. That was very succinct, and I think it did
State your name.
yeah, sorry, Adam Bell. I'm with Core Acquisitions, the developer of the project.
Thank you. And if anybody's gonna speak, please state your name and your address so we know who you are and where you're from, so we have to record. Thank you.
You got it. Again, thank you. A very good job on the presentation. I think it very succinctly summed up the overall project and what we're looking to do here. I just wanted to clarify a couple things and add a couple things if that's all right. So for the Chipotle, we did mention that it's a drive-through. However, with the Chipotle, it's part of their Chipotle concept. So it's not actually a full drive-through where you have a menu board. It's a mobile order pickup lane. So you do all of your ordering on your phone, you drive through, you give them your name and you pick up your food. If it's not ready, you go into your waiting zone. I believe they call them burrito loading zones. So what that does is it does eliminate or alleviate a lot of stacking issues there. So, for the most time, you really only have 1, 2, or 3 cars. So it's not a full menu board ordering point. The multi-tenant building, that is a full menu board ordering point, but we do have much more stacking there. As it relates to the tenants, I do just want to clarify, we are at LOI signed with Chipotle, Tropical Smoothie Cafe for lot 2 and Valvoline for lot 3. That being said, those are not signed leases, so they're still up in the air. I just want to, we're not committing that they're going to be there, but we do have signed LOIs, which is why we're ushering this through. Other than that, I think those were kind of clarifying points. I think Michael did a really good job summarizing the overall scope.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add? We good? I'm good. Okay. We'll go through the committee members and any questions you might have or concerns. Ms. Sanfilippo.
So regarding the Valvoline, I saw the handicap space, but the turn in there, are the handicap crossing the drive around to get into the building there? I just want to verify that it's, ADA compliant, the handicap space. I mean, I'm assuming it is, but I see it's sort of located.
Sure. So what we did, and I think this is probably the best option for the handicap stalls, is what we did is we do have it in the southeast corner of the property with the loading zone for the handicap adjacent to it with the striped crosswalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a striped crosswalk there, because my concern is, I realize this is probably the closest, but with people, coming in and out and driving through.
Sure. And just as an overarching comment to how this will actually operate. So Valvoline operates as you drive through and you load into the loading bay, you don't get out of your car. So people really, aside from employees that will be parking on this lot, there really aren't many people, if any, that will be parking and going inside. That's generally just for the staff. People that are actually going for their oil change services at no point will leave their vehicle. But the main intent is for people to exit out going to the west. So that way they're not actually going through this additional loading zone. This one-way drive on the east side of the property is for just general loading for the business.
Okay. I understand that. So, I just am asking just because, when you're dealing with handicapped or ADA people, sometimes, they may not know to drive around and, I'm just.
Yeah, I think with placing the handicap stall as closest to the front door as
Yeah.
possible, with having this crosswalk that's striped, I think that provides,
Right.
you know, the amount of, you know, visible access to get to
Yeah.
the building that you need.
Yeah, and I know, some similar, auto facilities have, and I realize they probably don't have room, but some parking in the back there too, but.
And that's something that we could look into. I just, when you start putting parking in the back, that actually leads to a much longer, walk if you're
Right.
talking about going to the north side of the property.
Right.
And, a majority of the car traffic will actually be in the rear of the building with people coming and loading, so I feel having it closer to Route 173 is probably the safer option, but,
Right.
that's something that.
And I know he talks about the stacking, but how many cars, remind me again, how many cars can be stacked there, like
Sure, I believe.
waiting to pull in?
Yes, I believe you have room for three, there's 3 bays, you have room for 3 within the bays with another 9 behind it, so 3 stacks with 3. And generally, I've done a couple of these valve lanes, they're rarely over 3 total. So I think 9 is kind of superfluous, but we like to have it to make sure that there's not any sort of congestion or issues.
Okay, and then regarding the whole development, the culture, I know you added the cultured stone.
Yeah.
Per the village, suggestion. Is the bottom portion a smooth brick
It's
or?
usually a rough finished CMU face brick.
Okay, because like in the drawings that we saw, I mean, it looked like brick and then cultured stone on top, so which could look a little goofy. So I just wanted to clarify that. So it's more of a smooth,
Yeah, I mean, it's a smooth like block finish.
okay,
And then you have the cultured stone on top of it.
okay. And I heard mention of the one drive-through that's part of the retail development, the smoothie. I know, I
Yeah.
realize it's not a done.
Yeah, tropical smoothie cafes.
And is there any intent for the proposed retail at this time or?
So right now, we have hired CBRE, one of the premier retail brokerage houses in the Chicagoland market. We've worked with them on a number of projects and they've brought, best in class users. Our intent is to bring the best possible users. I know that they went live with marketing about a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago. And there's been quite a few interested parties. I mean, I would state that any sort of user that we bring in, we want the village to be incredibly happy with. We can't control who the users are that are interested in each respective market. But the users that we would bring in would kind of fall within the city zoning code for permitted uses under this zoning jurisdiction.
Okay. Let's see what else. Regarding the lighting, I mean, is that gonna be on, I mean, I'm assuming it'll be on or all night for the development? Correct, or?
And I can maybe let our engineer speak to that a little bit more as they develop the photometric plans.
Okay,
That being said, for a majority of the projects that we do, most businesses close around 10 or 11, and we generally see lights go off around that time, just to not waste electricity.
okay, because that was gonna be my next question, the operating hours. I know, I'm familiar with Chipotle, I know they're kind of a later.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if the lights go out completely or what we're talking about as far as lighting overnight.
Yeah, for the most part, we don't usually have lights running after the
Okay.
most of our developments.
And I guess I'm not a picker upper at Chipotle, so I'm glad that you brought that up, the burrito zone or whatever it was called. How many spots are there for that?
Generally they do 3 or 4. I'd have to double
Okay.
check we'd have to double check the lease draft that we have out right now, but
Okay,
usually we have about 3 or 4.
okay, and where would those spots be?
Sure, so if you see the 5 stalls, to the south, they generally put them there. That is something that we negotiate as a lease exhibit, so it's still a negotiation. They might look to have a couple closer, to the front door. So if you look at the site plan, there's a 1-2 next to the handicap stalls. Those might turn into like burrito loading zone 1, burrito loading zone 2.
Okay, but it's not along the side in the drive-through part, right?
No, it's not alongside the driveway.
Okay.
No, it's dedicated parking stalls.
Okay, I see. I think that's all I have for now.
Ms. Carson.
Thank you. Michael, I think folks are gonna be concerned about the access. Can you explain how
you said, IDOT would warrant justify signals. What does that mean? Can you explain how often they're looking at traffic and studying it?
So obviously. It's just obviously the Illinois Department of Transportation has complete jurisdiction over Route 173. So the good news is that IDOT has generally identified and consented that the signalization will be at Lincoln. As you know, there is a signal over at Walmart. There is a requirement of minimum spacing, approximately a quarter of a mile before IDOT will approve it, okay? But even that they have approved it, but it has to meet the warrants. Now, we do believe the warrants with this proposed development and with future development with the Kia, these three outlots, any future outlots to the west, that the warrants will be justified for a full signalization. So that there will be, we plan to have a full signal, but I'm not promising against all subject to IDOT's review. So they're looking at warrant. When I say warrants, that means basically traffic. So, I mean, if you had obviously a Walmart or Menards, a large big box, almost all justifies, that creates the warrants for a full signal.
Do you know when we did Walmart, when they added the lane?
I believe it's all concurrent.
It was concurrent when it came through, but typically IDOT is a reactionary body, so they don't do things planning. Wisconsin does their road planning as planning. We don't in Illinois. Everything is done with however many accidents that go and happen in a turn, how many people are up and down each one of the roads, how many people are accessing property. So they have to then set up, after this goes in place, the readers to determine if it's going to fit the warrants for that signaling. And basically with what 173 does, it should fit those warrants. So that's where we're going to be. It's just going to come in after it's developed.
I worry about the residents over there. Is there an opportunity for the residents to communicate with IDOT or something?
Well, they have not, after the residents have an opportunity, either, believe it or not, reaching out to your state rep,
Sure.
who has a better connection with IDOT than probably an individual homeowner. I've worked with state reps and they have connections. And we have a lobbyist who has really good connections with IDOT. So the plan is to put no question, that intersection will be signalized. I just can't make a representation tonight whether it'll be concurrent with these first three outlots or when that will happen.
I understand that. I just want to give the people some options if they can.
Right.
Put some power back in their hands. Okay. Lot
Actually,
two is,
developers, I heard that comment, and that's actually a really good question.
I didn't hear.
Question is who's paying for it? And so the developer will be responsible for the master developer will be responsible for making improvements to 173. So the developer will be responsible for that, and also the future signalization. That will all be basically negotiated as part of the development agreement, as part of this overall development.
Hang on just 1 second, just so everybody knows what's going on. If you're gonna make a comment about anything that has to do with this particular development, you need to stand up and be sworn in. You need to come up and speak into the mic, and you need to give us your name and your address so we can get it on record, okay? If you have nothing to say, great, then let's keep it down so that we can hear what's going on and it can be recorded, and then we can go on with the rest of the meeting. All right, anything else, Ms. Carson?
Yeah, I have a list.
Go for it.
Okay. Lot two is 3 tenants or 2, because a couple drawings showed 2 and then some showed 3.
Yeah, because we do not have an actual set tenant for the remainder of the 300 square feet. We leave it flexible because there's some users that would be 4,000 square foot users that would take the whole space, or it might get split into, that might get further demise. So it could be 2, it could be 3.
And then Michael, because it's both retail, it wouldn't impact parking requirements.
Yes, that's a good point. It could have an impact, but as you can see, there's well excess 50 spaces. So even if that was all commercial, let's say that was all another restaurant, it would still comply.
Okay. Michael, my questions are mostly for you, so, no signage requests for this property?
Again, signage is handled administratively. So as this is approved, they'll come in for individual signage.
So as I look from 173 at the buildings, what does the elevation look like? Cause I'm not an expert in some of this.
So the site is it's, I believe, less elevated than Kia. Kia, as you can see, Kia is pretty elevated. This site is less elevated. that the applicant would be, each outlet would be entitled to a monument sign. I have requested that the base of each monument sign have matching cultured stone, so everything's tied together. So that's something that, obviously, the end users will come through when they have their sign designs, i.e. for their monument signs. They're entitled to a wall sign facing Route 173 and probably a wall sign facing Lincoln Avenue or the drive-throughs.
And then it looked like we had two gray buildings and one brown. I know this is nitpicky, but is that gonna be weird? I mean, we build stuff too, I don't know.
So unfortunately, our hands are a little bit tied because these are national users that have their national branding prototypes and their national footprints. And we can't really do anything about what tenants' building colors are when we're talking about freestanding users. So Chipotle's standard national colors are a kind of a darkish gray and a lightish gray. We decided to tie in our multi-tenant building that we have a little bit more control over to the Chipotle building, which is that gray and like the grayish colors, light gray, dark gray. Unfortunately, with the Valvoline, their ethos and bird colors are set in stone. We can't really do anything about it. They have national architects that design their buildings and set their buildings, and we have to adhere to it. But we were able to convince them to add in the culture face stone to tie into the other two buildings. So we did what we could.
And then, Michael, can you pull up the drawings of the buildings again? Can we just look at those and look at which is gonna face 173 and which is gonna face each of the streets?
Everyone, as we said, we are trying to have a proceeding here. This proceeding will be a recorded proceeding with minutes. So we have to keep the comments in the audience to a minimum.
So let's start with lot one. So you can see the front elevation, which will face south. This front elevation with three bays, each. This will be facing south. And then you can see the side elevation that will be facing Kia. Okay, so to give you context, that's what you drive along 173. That's what you'll be seeing. This proposed elevation is facing north. So the access road, if you're on the access road between Brown Road and Lincoln, driving through the three outlets to the north, that's what you're facing. You'll see those three bays there. And then again, that side elevation that will be facing the retail building. Let's look at the retail center. The retail center, which is right next to the Valvoline, you can see the front elevation there. That's facing south. That's driving along 173. That's what you'll see, that front elevation. You can see the rear elevation in the back with the utility doors. That will be what you're seeing, hopefully subject to some improvements based on our comments along the access drive. So you're driving on that access drive to the north of the retail building. That's what you'll be looking at. I assume they'll want some signage. We do allow rear signage, but with some improvements there and with the parapet, that should address our concerns. Side elevation, you can see the drive-through there. That will be facing towards the Chipotle's, towards the west. And then you can see the other side elevation, which will be facing the Valvoline elevation. With regards to Chipotle's, technical issues tonight. You can see the bottom side, the front elevation facing Route 173. You can see the rear elevation. So again, that will be facing the access road in the back to the north. You can see the drive-through window there facing, that will be facing Lincoln Avenue. So you can see the drive-through window there with a side a wall sign. And then you can see on the top, that will be the elevation, which will be adjacent to the retail building, facing east.
And then what was I might have missed this in your report, so I'm sorry. What was the paint on meters earth tone?
Yeah, staff does require that either the meters, any type of utility meters,
Okay,
either be fully enclosed, i.e. like a utility wall, or probably more practical, just to simply paint them so they blend in with the building. So we don't want the stainless steel look.
that's it.
Ms. Mish?
My first question is for Michael. In looking at the landscaping, do we have guidelines set up so that we aim to have native trees or native plants planted versus non-native?
We don't actually require that. That's a really good suggestion. I think there are some general guidelines in the Route 173 design guideline that encourages native plantings, native trees. We can look at them more carefully. You can see there's a fair amount of grasses and things like that, native. I don't remember, I'm gonna double check and see if the plants are all native. If they're using burning bushes, which are not native, I know they're very pretty in the fall, but that's not a native shrub. So we can look at that more carefully and I can work with the applicant's landscape architect.
Okay, that is something I'd be interested in seeing. And the other question I had, I think for you was, maybe this is for the other people, but the lanes for the drive-throughs, did we say how many cars could fit in those lanes?
Yeah, I did. So, again, our ordinance requires 4 cars, so all the drive-through lanes in lot 3 and lot 2 exceeded 6. Maybe, I think one had 7, so they comply with our ordinance.
We can provide a stack.
Okay. And then you mentioned that the Chipotle and tropical smoothie are not official yet, so if that were to not happen, what would be the next plan then?
Sure, so I've dealt with this in the past. We recently completed development down in Huntley, Illinois, where we had a 2-tenant building that we brought before the plan commission and subsequent zoning boards. And our 2-tenant building with national QSRs died, which was unfortunate, but we were quickly and swiftly able to, through our marketing efforts, bring in 7 Brew that's now under construction. And we've done it multiple times in the past where we have a pretty good pulse on the market. We're very active in the Chicagoland area with multiple developments under construction or under development currently. So, the intent would be to swiftly and quickly find a different user.
Okay. And Michael, again, is that something that they could decide themselves, or do they need to come back to us and we?
Well, at a minimum, we would have to work with them on that. I don't know if that would require a full site plan review again, unless they change any type of elevations. In all probability, they would change elevations that would require a site plan review. So let's say the Chipotle's changed to, I don't know, pick another national chain. And in reality, that would probably require a site plan review because that chain would have a completely different look than the Chipotle.
Okay. My last comment is not a question, but just to agree with Commissioner Karstensen, the intersection for Lincoln without a traffic light is concerning. I've tried pulling left out of there before, and even as it is now, can be scary, and the traffic there is not great. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Madigan?
A lot of my questions have been answered already, but, is there regarding the trash containing areas, what is the width to allow for like the garbage truck to get in there? The only reason I say that is because I see now like where the Starbucks is over on like in 173, right? They come in the morning and there's already a pile of cars, in the drive-through and the Starbucks guys trying to maneuver back in there, so.
Yeah, I can speak to that in a little bit of a general sense. Most trash dumpsters that you see from these national users are 8 yards, which are about 6 to 8 feet across. So most of our enclosures are about 10 to 12 feet, depending on, and sometimes bigger, just depends on the size of the user. Like multi-tenant would be a little bit larger. What we've done though on the site plan and what we try to do is make sure it's as convenient as possible to where your stacking is not going to be blocking in the trash corral. And it's something that, Starbucks, the Starbucks of the world, they've changed a lot of their national site planning guidelines to allow for the trash corrals to be a little bit further away from the stacking of their drive-throughs so it doesn't interfere. That's been the case on these as well, to where, we push at these trash corral locations to where they're not impacted. affected by any sort of low stacking.
I do like all of the landscaping, but I agree with Commissioner Lynch that if we could definitely get some more, natural, lawn location. That would be awesome. I think that's the only thing that.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Everything looks well done to me. I do agree, the landscaping, I'm appreciative of all the trees and the islands. You know, I'm one of those where I like to park underneath the shade of a tree. The only thing I was have to ask is, one, is the Valvoline gonna be an addition to the Valvoline we already have? It's franchised out. Do you know, are you aware if the same franchisee is involved with this one?
I'd have to double check that, but I do know that the franchisee that operates in the Chicagoland market is all the same franchisee.
Okay, because I know that on Route 83, south of 173, we do have a current Valvoline, so my question would be, are we adding an additional business or are we just replacing?
I'd have to look into that other one. I believe we're adding an additional one. I'd have to look into that to see if they're a licensed franchisee deal or a licensed Valvoline dealer where they can sell Valvoline oil products, but is not under the actual Valvoline instant oil change, because the IOC Valvoline instant oil change is its own business. I'd have to double check to see
Yeah, no,
if that's a licensee of.
I'd appreciate that information. The other question for me would be, are these 3 lots, since you don't have committed tenants, will they be going up at the same time? Or are we
Yeah,
talking?
so where we're at with, and I can dive into the timing a little bit right now. So where we're at is we have 3 leases out with all 3 tenants that we're negotiating concurrently. We're not intending to start this in, say, January, February. There's still some IDOT things that need to be sorted out. Our goal would be late spring, early summer to start construction. Based on my experience on doing multiple deals with all of these users, we should have leases signed in the next couple of months to allow us to start concurrently. So to answer your question, yes, the goal is to basically work through with the master developer of the project, the offsite improvements, especially considering the Lincoln Avenue access point, as well as our construction. So ideally, yes, we'll have all 3 going at the same time.
No, I look at as, like directors mentioned, they've gone above and beyond our minimum requirements, not only on design, but landscaping buffers, and I have no other questions.
Okay. At this time, I have no other questions. The board did a good job. Did you have something else you wanted to add, Sam?
Well, after we've been discussing, I just wanted to, the signaling and the warrants, and I'm hoping that Michael may be able to speak to this, but when it was done for the Walmart, about what was the time frame for that? Do you have any idea?
Well,
And I know you can't speak for
that's
them,
before my
Michael.
time, but I believe the signal was completed concurrent with the Walmart. Yes, so it was completed those intersection improvements at Deep Lake Road, and the main entrance were all done concurrent with that development. It's a Walmart. It's a completely
Right.
different analysis.
Right. And then the other thing I should have asked earlier was and maybe, Michael, if we could go back to the proposed detention pond.
Again, this is very, I apologize, I think you have engineering for overall site. I didn't incorporate that, but this is generally the location. If you drive out to the marketplace, just a little bit north of Kia, you'll see a huge, not the Kia retention ponds, but there's an area almost along the northern perimeter of the property. There's a large retention area that will service the whole site,
Okay.
with the exception of Kia.
So it's north of the residential, the detention pond? Or proposed, that's proposed,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Yes. So there'll be a series of retention ponds there, yes, but there is already a large retention area that's been constructed, which will service the commercial aspect and then future residential or whatever to the north.
I see, okay,
Yeah, that detention is basically to take on the entire site.
Okay.
So minus Kia.
got
Kia
it,
has its own
Right.
individual detention ponds because it was built first.
right,
And they are their own separate purchased property. So they
Okay.
did their own construction with their own detention.
sure. And Michael, again, this is probably more for you, but I know I heard the fellow commissioners mentioning the native plantings. Which I believe in the tree preservation, that though, that's already written into that for native trees.
Right.
But I agree with you and our fellow commissioners that maybe for the plantings, it's a good idea. So I just wanted to make that comment, because I don't think I'm not sure that we have anything that,
It's something we can probably incorporate for a
Yeah.
future community development director. I know he's potentially incorporating some native planning requirements or sustainability requirements. For BMPs, things like that. That's all encourages native plantings.
yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody from the public have any comments they'd like to come up and talk about? All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion for consideration of the request for special use for the drive-through for two commercial outlets, 2 and 3 located in the northeast corner of Route 173 Lincoln Avenue, PIN number 0216106001.
Second.
Twenty-four dash 14. With the stipulations outlined by. Yeah, yeah, so.
Okay.
And I'll second,
Second,
yes.
okay, roll call.
Campbell,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Madigan, yes, Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll obviously work with staff to get you farther through.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Motion, sorry,
We got site plan.
site plan. So special, you got a site plan, we have preliminary and final plat.
That's what I was asking.
so we just approved, I just made a motion for the special use.
That's the second motion.
I'll make
You're
a
up.
second for the site plan for PCB 24-14
With the record.
with the recommendations from commissioners regarding native planting.
I'll second,
Roll call.
Campbell,
yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Madigan, yes, Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Garrett, are there any other motions?
Yeah, we need a motion for the approval of the preliminary and final plat.
So I can make a motion for approval of the preliminary plat, what item,
Preliminary and final.
and final plat. And it's for PCB 24-14.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Campbell,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Madigan, yes, Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, so we're completed with that package, Mr. Garrigan.
Yes, we are.
All right, next on the agenda is.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. PCB 24-10, consideration of the site plan review, preliminary and final plat approval for CarMax located at 2101 East Route 173. Mr. Garrigan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter comes before the plan commission again, based on a continuation. As you recall, at the last meeting, we had a proposed CarMax. I'm not gonna go through in my summary the whole case again. As you recall, I did go through the site plan review and final plat of this proposed development. What I wanted to kind of spend some time on this evening is based on the previous concerns. I know, obviously, there were a lot of concerns by the residents about sightline problems, sightline issues with the current development at the Antioch Corporate Park. There was a lot of discussion at the last meeting. So I've asked the applicant to provide some additional information pertaining to the sightline issues. In addition, one of the things that staff has consistently requested is some incorporation of some BMPs so that you can see the applicant has incorporated additional bioswales, which the applicant will talk about. But this evening, instead of going through, unless the plan commission has some questions, excuse me, I wanted to turn over to the applicant's development team to walk you through the additional improvements that have been made based on the residents' concerns, based on the commissioner's concerns at the last meeting. And if you want us to review the overall project, I'd be more than happy to do that, but it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
No, that'll be fine. Let's go over the improvements that we put together. the changes to the BMPs and also your, more specifically, your changes to the photometrics and the lighting for this project. That's one of the biggest concerns the residents have.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission, members of the public. My name is Bruce Goldsmith. I'm with the law firm Dykema. I'm at 4200 Commerce Court, Lyle, Illinois, Suite 505.
Can I have everybody, anyone who's going to be speaking to this case tonight, please stand up, raise your right hand and be sworn in. If you are, or if you're not, or if you think you're going to. Thank you.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this hearing is factual to the best of your knowledge.
I do.
Thank you. Continue, sir.
I have the impression that if I talk to you about these four things, that's not all we're going to talk about tonight.
Well,
So I just would like to give you context so we know why we're here tonight. I think that'll be helpful for everyone. So in 2007, IDI, a developer, came to the village and got approval for a plan unit development for M1 light manufacturing for all the Antioch corporate center. The zoning has been in place for 17 years. The only reason we're here tonight is that the market wasn't as strong as the original developer thought. And so a lot of the park hasn't been developed. But when this was approved in 2007, 20 plus buildings were located on the site. In today's market, they would be 40-foot clear. The buildings we're talking about are 24 feet high. So they're substantially below what would be allowed under the existing PUD. So I want to give that context because people somehow think that, you know, this is somehow being slipped before the board. And in fact, the board made those decisions in 2007 after recommendations from a plan commission. I don't know if any of you were on there at that point, but this is all, the zoning's in place, requirements are in place to have a plan approved. We've submitted the documents necessary for a plan approval. This is the subject of tonight's meeting, which is this site plan review, preliminary and final plat approval. And we have met all the requirements of the village with regard to all those elements. So this has been before, this is the third time we've been before you to explain the project. And we certainly can give the overview, but I'm not going to do that now unless you ask for it. So there were four things that were talked about. One was lighting. We're going to address that and give you information. But just as an overall comment on the photometrics, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you specifically understood these things.
Yeah.
The lumens at the perimeter of the property are 0. So we're above this, above or below, depending on how you look at it. We're more compliant than the village requires at 0.5. So that's number one. But we're going to talk to you about what the lighting, the only lighting that really I think was a subject of concern, because it's the closest to the neighbors who are still quite far away, is the lighting in the storage area where the cars are parked. And we'll talk about what we've done to reduce that to what is minimally necessary for security and for operational purposes. And then we'll also talk about sight lines, and we have a visual to show you that. With respect to the stormwater management system, we've actually added ponds that will filter the water before they get to the detention pond. So we met the BMPs originally. We're meeting the BMPs again. And just for the audience benefit, that's best management practices. Best management practices are required by the Lake County ordinance. We're in full compliance with the Lake County ordinance, but because of the concern of what runoff would be from the storage area, we put the ponds closer to the storage, in fact, immediately adjacent to the storage area before they go into the stormwater management facility. So we've addressed that as well. And I think the final comment actually had to do with the species, and we have given the village, and hopefully you have, the species that will be used for landscaping of the property. As to sight lines, we have some visuals to show you because we took some more pictures and we took some Google Map renditions to show how the property will look to the west or northwest where the residents who expressed concerns. And we actually have a further suggestion about that after we make the presentation. So I'll put this to Kelton McCoy, who will give the next part of the presentation.
Thank you. Make sure when you come up, please state your name and talk into the microphone.
My name is Joe Mayer with Kinley Horn, licensed engineer. I'm a project civil engineer with Kinley Horn and Associates Inc. 111 West Jackson, Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you.
So I'll immediately just address the bioswale request. So as Bruce mentioned, we've added 5 additional bioswales on the west and southwest portions of the primary parking lot or storage area. I think Bruce well summarized it, but this is a added benefit to get treatment closer to a potential source for runoff. And we're in total compliance with the stormwater ordinance. So at this image, it's the green area immediately east of the larger pond, upstream of the pond to preliminary treat the stormwater runoff. Right.
What was the minimum requirement for the BMPs?
Yeah, so there's a couple different requirements from the county ordinance. The first element is 1 inch of runoff for the impervious area, so that the actual storage volume. And then there's types of treatment, both suspended solids and oils and grease. So through these different BMPs, we're treating all 3 of those factors.
Okay, and how many were required for BMPs from this site originally?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How many BMPs were required for this runoff originally when you first looked at it?
So the stormwater management pond was designed to achieve all of those together. So the way that the system is set up with a storage below its primary outlet, it will provide these benefits. So the bioswales that we've added is just changing the type of BMPs we're providing to provide more diversity at the request of the Plan Commission.
Okay, thank
My name is Kelton McCoy, address is 1626 Cole Boulevard, Lakewood, Colorado. I'd like to touch on the photometric plan. As Bruce mentioned before, this is our second iteration of a photometric plan. The first iteration delivered to staff. We made some modifications to, as you can see on the screen there. Mainly in the cell staging area, the average foot candles was reduced by 11%. The way we get those numbers is we have each bullet point essentially within the plan as a foot candle number. Majority of the larger foot candle numbers are actually on the eastern portion of the site where the gates are closer to Handy Foil, as far away from the residential as possible. That's where majority of the double digit foot candle numbers come from. Regardless, that plan number was reduced 11% from the first time we spoke with y'all, and is ultimately under code. Same goes for the customer employee lot, which is the southern portion of the customer parking lot. Those numbers were reduced 20%. Again, the higher number percentage in that parking lot is also on the eastern portion, further away from residential, closer to Handy Foil.
Do you have any wall packs on the building at all?
That-
Do you have any wall packs on the building?
Yes, sir.
And are they on the east side?
I believe so.
Or what do you have on the west side?
I don't know. Not sure. I would suspect on all sides.
All right, wall packs on the side of the building on the west side, I'd like to have them eliminated if we could.
Okay.
And keep to just the 90-degree down on the upper lighting so that it doesn't affect with any glare going towards western area towards the residents.
Understood.
Now, if we keep it to the east side, then it's gonna be working away from them, and it's not gonna affect them as much, so,
Shining right into it.
right. Okay. You have anything else you'd like to add to this with your landscaping?
So we've prioritized, our buffering on the south and west sides of this development. As previously mentioned at, last month's plan commission, have utilized this in a screening fashion so that, it is in between us and the adjacent land uses. You know, meeting the ordinance from both the density and species and type perspective, as well as, you know, setting expectations for minimum plant size, at installation.
Thank you. Did you add anything additional to the original plan that we went through, or, because I think we added some for the first time we talked.
Yeah, we have not, well, sorry, the bioswales, when we added that inherently, is another buffer since that was provided on the west side. So not only do we have the evergreens and deciduous trees that are on the west side, we now also have some of the naturalized plantings that are associated with the bioswales, because that's also on that western buffer, so that was added. Otherwise, we've agreed to the comments that were in the engineering letter, but around, just landscaping and buffering in general.
All right, thank you.
Next, we'll run a couple perspectives that we were able to run from the concerns of the neighbors. So here's our first perspective. We shot 3 different perspectives from 3 different locations on the western portion of our site, eastern portion of the neighborhood. So obviously it looks a little funky with the trees. They look a little cartoonish. These iterations were made off of Google Earth and with CAD from our site. As you can see, it's fairly difficult to see through the vegetation. The team was actually out there again today, and it's consistent even with the thinner foliage. So we'll jump to the next viewpoint.
Run it again and just stop it at a couple spots so people can see it.
So if you can see here, you can see our proposed landscaping, evergreens all along the western portion of our site, as well as our landscape islands and other buffering landscape requirements in the CE parking lot to the south. These iterations do include buildings, existing and future buildings. Here's our second iteration. As you can see there, Handy Pool is obviously very visible, as well as our auction production building, which is on the southern portion of our site, as well as the referred to water tower as in the last meeting. Run through that one again. And then you can see our proposed landscaping there. Obviously, will grow in thicker through time. Here is our third iteration. This one coming directly off of the cul-de-sac at the end of Peterson Drive. Once again, a viewpoint of the water tower in the top right portion of the picture here. Proposed landscaping on the primary site with existing vegetation in the wetland. And just a reminder, that is a wetland and will stay vegetated throughout the area. Here's just a couple of still shots from those perspectives. Understood that this is probably the main point of concern in this shot here. As mentioned, we took photos from this evening. Obviously, the vegetation is a little bit thinner than what showed in Google Earth, but pretty consistent with what our iterations have run even in December. Again, a viewpoint of the water tower.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have anything else they'd like to ask for questions right now? Yes, we
Just a reminder on these iterations that our proposed CarMax buildings are involved in there via CAD, via, building footprint, all that technical wise. And those are still not visible. Just trying to make sure that was reiterated.
Thank you. Ms. Sanfilippo.
I think we've already covered the berm, but how does the berm with the landscaping affect, the grading, the water runoff to the area?
So we have actually not, there's an embankment for the pond. Intended to hold the volume of water that's tributary to it. But there is not an elevated berm between the pond and parking lot for your exact reason. We analyzed whether the berm would assist or help with the buffer. But because the adjacent neighbors to the west are actually sitting higher, it wouldn't affect the view corridor. We found that the existing vegetation as well as our proposed vegetation would be more impactful or more of a buffer than anything that a berm would create.
Okay, so the berm's been eliminated or?
There's a berm on the south side of the property.
On the south side.
There is now a berm on the west.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Ms. Carstensen,
Oh, wait.
Ms. Reed. Ms. Madigan. Mr. Martinez.
Council Goldsmith, in agreement, what we're talking about is 16 acres of paved parking that's enclosed by 6-foot privacy fencing with 2 buildings, one that is the highest point is gonna be 24 feet tall, less than 36,000 square feet. Another building is gonna be less than 8,000 feet. Next to Handy Foil, what we said is close to 500,000 feet. Am I right?
It's over, we believe it's over 500,000 and we believe it's 40-foot clear. And what we did with those long range depictions is to show you, you can't see these buildings at all.
Agreed. You can't see this building at all. And not only are we going to have privacy fencing wrapped around the building and the 16 acres of parking lot, you on the west end are going to put up trees again to create a natural buffer alongside the fencing from our neighbors on the west.
We're buffering the pond, we're buffering the site, both from the south and the west, but we're generally buffering the whole site. That you're correct. And the point, even when you looked at the renditions, you can't see the Handy Foil building with the vegetation that's along the creek. And I questioned, and Kelton went out there today, well, it's not summer anymore, but there's so much scrub trees in there that you can't see through the branches of the trees to get a look beyond there. So there's natural buffering because of the creek and the protection that the creek has, and then there's all the buffering that we're gonna do on the site.
The only question I have for you is about your tie later on.
Okay, I'm happy to answer that.
That's it.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Goldsmith. Would you mind stepping back up? Did you just get sworn in?
I was sworn in,
You
yeah.
were sworn in. I know you're an officer of the court and you have obligation to do due diligence.
I'm happy to be sworn again. if
I
you
would
want me.
love to see you get sworn in. I was taking notes, so you're sworn and obviously an officer of the court. And you have an obligation to do due diligence before you give answers before a tribunal, such as this one, right?
I can give you my CV too, that might help for that. No,
I'm very familiar with your CV.
Well, I just, for the benefit of the audience, I've done millions of square foot of development, of this kind of development, light industrial development. I've done tens of thousands of homes, residential development. And I stand by my knowledge in answering your questions.
And your diligence in.
With this site in particular.
Beautiful. What you're asking for tonight, or what your clients are asking for tonight, it's not a variance, correct?
Correct.
It's not a map amendment,
There's no zoning involved in this process.
so it's not a text amendment
No,
or a special use permit.
no.
It's merely a site plan, correct?
Well, there is a special use permit already in place, and we're relying on that.
Correct. So you have already looked at the zoning relative to the site, so all you need to come in for here, and all we're here for tonight is for a site approval, I believe we call it.
Site plan approval and preliminary and final plat.
And that's an administrative function, correct?
Yes, and I believe in the staff reports, it confirmed that we're in full compliance with the PUD.
Thank you. One more question. That is a legislative act by the corporate authorities, is your understanding, correct?
That was done by the board in 2007.
Thank you so much, counsel.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody from the public wants to get up and give some comments? We do have a few people who have been listed here. We'll start with Mark Shaw.
I'll be brief because I did submit my statement in writing to everybody of the board, and I've submitted it to the audience, so I'll merely summarize it just for the record since you're recording. Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of this combined planning commission and zoning board, my name is Mark Shaw of Shaw Law Limited, representing objectors Charles or Chuck Esdale, Brian Beck, Jody Beck, Andre Santos, and Olivia Santos. If the Santoses just could stand up and be recognized. Thank you. The Becks. Mr. Esdale. Mr. Esdale is a longtime resident of Antioch. He resides at 19580 West Peterson Drive South in Antioch. The Becks are residents who live at 19472 West Peterson Drive South in Antioch. And the Santoses are residents who live at 19539 West Peterson Drive South in Antioch. Mr. Esdale appeared at your board meeting on November the 6th. He provided you with oral and written statements for the record regarding PZB 14, CarMax Inventory Center Concept Plan, and the proposed CarMax Inventory Wholesale Facility. I would ask that you re-enter Mr. Esdale's statements into the record of tonight's meeting so he doesn't have to get up and make the statement again. In addition, I'd like to note for the record that Mr. Kevin Mathewson, the licensed private investigator, was retained by Mr. Esdale to submit Freedom of Information Act requests to the Village of Antioch. He did that on November the 19th. His request sought any and all documentation regarding this particular proposal, including any types of studies, which would include drainage impacts, economic impacts, environmental impacts, traffic flow impacts, reflective light impacts. He followed up on a number of occasions after the submission of the FOIAs and was informed on the 26th of November that they had been received and that he should be receiving a response that same day. Nevertheless, at the close of business today, he still had not received any response to the FOIA requests. Before coming in here, I was informed that he had received a large Dropbox or a zip file on his email, but he has not had a chance to open it to see what exactly is in there. To the extent that that provides a lot of information that might clarify some of my client's concerns. Obviously, I'm looking for some time to review it and to determine what, if any, additional arguments that we would like to make. He has filed an administrative review with the Attorney General's office at the end of the day because he had not received those documentations within a timely fashion. But assuming that we have received what we requested, he'll withdraw that request from the Attorney General. Without a thorough review of those documents, it's difficult for me to put forth specific concerns that we have with any type of expert supporting testimony. So suffice it to say, I would like to address some of the general concerns that we have at this point. Number one was the fact that my client did not receive any notice as required or any minutes or anything of that nature regarding this meeting, these meetings that have occurred and what the plan was. The minutes of the August 8th board meeting indicate that notice had not been given out at that time. They have not posted the minutes from the November 6th board meeting as of, again, earlier today, from what we could tell on their website, nor was the agenda posted online. It's my understanding the agenda was posted here locally from what I saw from the agenda tonight. From what I'm told, apparently there's inconsistent information on the website for Antioch that explains when these meetings are held. Apparently they're held on Wednesday as opposed to Thursdays, like apparently was indicated on the website. There was a concern raised at the last meeting by Mr. Esdale that members of this board had not actually gone out there and personally looked at the site and walked it and determined and maybe even talked to the residents as to what the concerns may or may not be. There's various negative impacts that we're concerned about. These would include excessive noise from possible live auctions and problem traffic jams that could occur based upon the increased traffic that will occur there. The extreme light pollution from operating hours between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. at a minimum on a daily basis, and presumably 24-hour security lighting of some type for approximately 36,000 square foot building and a parking lot for 3,000 automobiles. Unsightly views of 3,000 wholesale automobiles, which there's no telling what condition they would be in. Drainage log jams from the presumably impermeable surface of the parking lot. Possible contamination to the drinking water, since the residents here, some are on wells, from toxic chemicals and other industrial contaminants. We believe that this board, if it hasn't done so, and we have no indication that it has, should merely review the U.S. Geological Survey topographical map of the area. And this shows that the intersection of Peterson Drive and Route 45 begins at an elevation of 799 feet, then reduces to 794 feet, then dead ends at the eastern end of Peterson Drive to an elevation of 773 feet. The CarMax facility, as we understand it, has elevations between 756 and 762 feet. This proposed elevation differential would require an extremely tall earthen berm and mature tall evergreen trees to create a barrier between the neighborhood and the CarMax facility. Now, this earthen berm could be similar to the one that was implemented on the eastern border of the Antioch Corporate Center, which protects the residents on Crawford. If the current plan is unable to accommodate this simple protection for wetland or other concerns, and that's what my understanding was, is there was an issue of the berm encroaching upon wetlands or the creek, then we feel like the plan ought to be adjusted to take that into consideration. Economically, the proposed CarMax facility is questionable for the following reasons. Number one, it's a wholesale operation, and therefore there's no sales tax that will go to the city. Number two, there's no real estate taxes will accrue to the village as a result of the site being located in the TIF, because as we all know, the TIF freezes the taxes of what the actual value was of the property at the time the TIF was implemented. This TIF doesn't expire for 11 years. And then after 11 years, the real estate taxes might be between $16,000 and $18,000 annually to the village, according to the minutes that I read. Given the zoning for light manufacturing, the proposal may not be consistent with the comprehensive plan and or the TIF district ordinance for the village of Antioch, resulting in a possible invalidation of the TIF district. A review of similar CarMax facilities in the Midwest demonstrates that except for one, they are located in the middle of industrial areas with no residential neighborhoods in the area. The CarMax facilities are located at the following addresses, and I list them, and I make reference to the one that is near some residential, and I distinguish what's different about that compared to what we're talking about here. In conclusion, my clients and I respectfully request that you ask yourselves whether you would like to live next to this particular development as currently proposed, because understandably, they do not wish to do so. Accordingly, we respectfully ask you to pause tonight, give us an opportunity to review what was submitted to us, presumably late after business hours, to see exactly whether or not a number of our concerns and questions are properly answered, and even have some of our own potential experts look at this and see if they agree with the assessments that have been made. I don't know that you have to vote to approve this tonight. It would seem to me like continuing this until your next scheduled meeting would not be any major burden, and would give us an opportunity to digest what we have not received but requested until potentially later tonight. Thank you for your attention. We're not trying to necessarily stop the project. We're trying to slow it down so that we can be sure of what it is we're getting here. Effectively, we don't believe that is asking too much. My clients and I are willing to answer questions if you have any, and I'd ask that my remarks be a part of the written record.
Yeah, Mr. Shaw,
Yes, sir.
you are an attorney as
Yes,
well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I did swear.
And you did swear, that's excellent. And you're an officer of the court, and you do your due diligence before you put anything in writing, right?
I did it the best I could, given the limited information.
Sure. Are you familiar with the email that went out to the village's FOIA officer dated Tuesday, November the 26th at 4:34 p.m. to kenoshacounty@gmail.com, subject matter FOIA request, containing the following attachment: Kevin Mathewson request of 11/19/2024 PDF. Kevin Mathewson request 11/19/2024 number 2 PDF. Kevin Mathewson request 11/19/2024 3 PDF. CarMax TIS Antioch PDF. CarMax PBZ PDF. CarMax Antioch Physical Impact Analysis 2024-07-30. I'm sorry, there's so many words here. Let me get through this. 1543 PDF, doc 10895720240802130415 PDF. Standalone auction and recondition narrative, Antioch, Illinois PDF. Antioch concept application, PP final 02 PPTX, I don't know what that means. Read only PDF, PZB staff report PDF, CarMax SPR report PDF, Res 2 VBOT110724 PDF, 2 CarMax Antioch plat of survey PDF, 4 CarMax Antioch overall site plan PDF, CarMax Antioch architectural elevations PDF 6, CarMax Antioch overall landscape plan PDF 7, CarMax Antioch trash enclosure plan PDF, MG2BB1102224 PDF, RES 2BB1102224 PDF, LR2, sorry about that. LR2 VBOT09252 PDF, LR2 VBOT09224 PDF, and Kevin Mathewson response letter 11/26/2024. And again, that went out on November the 26th, 2024, 4:34 PM. Are you aware of that email?
I'm aware of the fact that he asked them when he was gonna get the information, and he.
I'm asking you if you're aware of that email.
No. I asked.
You answer the question I asked. I appreciate it.
Okay. Could I respond in greater detail, Mr. Chairman?
It's up to the chair.
In greater detail to what effect?
I'd refer him to Mr. Matheson, who's sitting right over there, and ask him if that he actually received that information.
Have you been sworn in?
No.
Stand up, raise your right hand, swear you're sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this hearing is factual to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Okay, go right ahead.
So
Yeah, if we're gonna be accused of not responding to a FOIA request and we responded, and I think we have a right to an explanation.
Right, so my information comes from.
Sure.
He's a better person.
Very unique. So anybody with an email account knows that when you add an attachment, you can't add 100 gigabytes to the attachment. Each individual mail server, whether it be Yahoo, Gmail, the max is usually right around 25. After I got the Dropbox documents minutes ago, it was well in excess of, I believe, 75 megabytes. In no world will a 75 megabyte attachment reach its destination, especially at the Gmail. So it's disingenuous to think that it would have.
It's
not
the question that was asked. Did you receive the email?
Absolutely did not.
You didn't receive the email that you just said that you got, but you didn't know that it could mix it up.
I did not receive the email.
Okay, that's great. That's fine.
I don't know how else to answer that.
Yeah.
Was that
That's, no, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All my due diligence was based upon what you told me.
Sure, right, and we have the email that shows that we did comply legally with all of our required obligations. It's not adversarial, but if we're gonna accuse of breaking the law, we're gonna have to respond to.
I'm not accusing you of breaking.
You actually wrote an objection that we got right before your hearing and said you did not file proper FOIA request responses or post your agenda the right way.
If he
So in
didn't
fact,
get it,
Mr.
if he didn't get
Mr.
it,
Shaw, you said that we broke the law.
Okay, no, I didn't, sir, and if you wanna argue about that, we can. What I said was that they did not respond, and if he didn't get it, then he didn't get it. He said he hadn't received it.
It is a law, you said we didn't comply with it.
Okay,
He didn't receive it, I don't know
Mr.
if
Chair?
what.
yes.
We wanna argue FOIA law now?
I really don't
You're
want to
the
argue.
expert on it, you're the one that brought it up, I'm willing to stand here and listen, sir. I tried to come in respectfully without being argumentative. I merely stated our position. I asked for some additional time to review stuff that we just got tonight, apparently, and you decided to play lawyer on us. Thank you very much, you've done your job.
You filed an objection with no notice to a body that you knew existed beforehand. Correct?
I didn't know what was going on because you don't post anything on your website until the last minute.
That's absolutely not true. If you look at the.
You heard me. Yes. You're a nasty dude.
The.
Are you a lawyer? What is your title? So Sherry Madigan. Yeah.
All right,
Well, we switched.
the website of the village is antiochil.gov. All of our meetings are posted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act at that point in time. I invite everyone to go there and check it out. They're posted in accordance with law. We follow OMA, we follow FOIA. And this could have been filed beforehand for us to have a conversation about it beforehand. So when you ask if we've been here to play lawyer, we're not playing lawyer. Being a lawyer is a serious job, Mr. Shaw. I'm sure you would agree. So if you come in here and you accuse my client of not having diligence in their duties, which is what you wrote in your paper to them, that they are not being diligent with what they do when they come up here and they volunteer their time, yeah, probably some questions will be asked.
Okay, and my response to that would be that we did not want to file an objection until we had the documentation that we were promised that we would receive well over a week ago. Instead, I had to file something tonight because I wasn't sure whether or not I would be given very much time to present our case. Therefore, I put it in writing so that you could read it and there'd be no misunderstanding.
And at 4:34 PM on 11/26 on 2024,
Says you.
email.
Megabytes.
Wow.
All right,
75 megabytes.
excuse me, everybody dial down for just a second, please, all right? I receive emails with oversized megabytes also. It tells me that I cannot pull out the information that's been sent with the email, but I still receive the email. If you didn't get something, you probably should have been a little more involved too and get in touch with us a couple weeks before, a little more information. We've given 3 times we've gone and extended this meeting so that we could have good information for you, have good information coming back and forth between all of us. We're not trying to short circuit something. We're not trying to rush something through. That's not the purpose of this board. So let's just dial it down just a little bit. Let's get through the meeting. If you have any other questions, you presented your information. Thank you very much. Yes, sir? Have you been sworn in?
I will.
Please raise your right hand. Be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give in this hearing is factual to the best of your knowledge?
I do. My name is Harold Sanford. I
Thank you.
live in Peterson,
Thank you.
Hickory Woods. To address the emails, if you're on just a normal Google account, you will not get that email of that file size of that nature. Period. At the end. It will not come through. It will not show. It will not be there. If you're on a special account, like a .gov or a G Suite or a larger capacity account, those emails are just fine. It's not you, the board, to tell this man that he didn't get an email. Just because he said send.
Excuse me. No.
I listened
Thank
to
you,
him
thank
talk.
you,
I
thank you.
listened to him talk. a
Thank you,
lot.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. I understand.
Do you understand? Are you here for
Absolutely.
the people? Or are you here for the company?
Obviously, again, we've
Company,
been,
right?
obviously, again, we've been here.
I've been in this position where they've been at.
I'm not gonna get into an argument with
You've already done that once before in my life.
What does that have to do with this?
I'm here for the fact that none of you have been out to that site and actually seen.
you. Yes, we have.
You're
Oh,
now
yeah.
making
I
an
live there.
assumption for every volunteer commissioner on this board.
Am
You
I
have
speaking?
no,
Am I speaking? Thank you, ma'am.
excuse me, if you're
I'll
gonna,
sit down
if
because
you're
you
going
don't
to
wanna listen
front
to
and you're
people.
gonna assume things
You don't wanna listen to
that you
people.
don't know,
You don't wanna listen to people.
you have no idea whether any of these commissioners have been to that site or not,
Nobody's speaking up.
for the record.
For the record, no
So-
one said they have. It doesn't sound like you're here for the people.
Was it ever asked of this body?
Yes,
When?
yes, here tonight.
Last month.
Come up to the microphone,
Last
please.
month when I spoke.
He's sworn in.
I
He's
asked,
sworn in.
I was sworn in already.
Yes.
I asked all of
Can you
you,
state your name for the record?
Charles Esdale, Peterson Drive. I stated and looked at each and every one of you in your face. Ms. Carstensen was on Zoom, so I couldn't see you. And asked you, did you drive down our street and look at the topography, how the road slopes and how we're gonna be looking down at this project? You all looked at each other and went, oh, and I got an email from Mr. McCarty the next day because he asked me to send my statement in. And you responded, I drove down there last night to see what you're looking at. So
Absolutely.
as far as I know, you were the only one, after I mentioned it at the November 6th meeting, that actually, thank you, I appreciate that out of the whole board, you're the only one that drove down and looked at it to see what we're gonna see, this eyesore.
The situation there, going down there and seeing it. I've been up and down that road a billion times. I've been on Peterson Drive. I haven't gone all the way to the end. I actually haven't been to Linda's house, so all the way to the end there, but I didn't sit there and study it. So, and out of respect, absolutely, I went out there and it was at night. I actually went around and drove over to the other site where the handy foil is, looked at the size of the building, looked at the lights, saw how it was reflecting and coming over. Absolutely, I saw it all. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and be up here and try to do anything for the public, and that's why we've extended it 3 times so that we can have these conversations.
Oh, really is.
Respect-
Time for us.
Respectfully, we've been doing this to try to make sure we have your good input. And we don't want to get into arguments with anyone.
Absolutely not.
So
We're just asking you to do your homework, take a ride down.
We always-
and see if you would
we
want
always do.
Chair,
to see.
I too have been down that road, Pearson Road, and I can say that
As have I.
in good faith,
Thank you.
I feel that this development will actually will block some of that lighting towards you in good faith.
So
I
driving
say-
on my road,
it-
seeing
it-
3,000 cars out at the end of the
And
street.
you're talking about 1,200, a neighbor 1,200 feet away from you.
Okay, let's get back
I
to this.
disagree with you.
Never gonna be.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McCarty.
Mr. Esdale, you got 1 second? Sure. Thanks. So, I hope you understand, these people, they come here and they volunteer their time, and they do work, they go out there, they don't just set their time.
Can I ask who you are? 'Cause
I'm the
you're-
village attorney.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I'm looking sign down because we weren't sure that.
Thanks, we didn't.
I
know
don't
you were-
Been here each.
In here.
He comes to all the meetings.
And you don't get a vote, I represent.
He's
Mr. Esdale, do
he's allowed to talk under
Go ahead.
our advisory.
Reasonable person.
Thanks, and I think I try to be too. And I'm sure that if the people with whom you work were accused of not doing their jobs, you might take it a little personally. And I know how hard this board works, and I represent 10 different municipalities, and they each have both zoning boards that meet once a month or twice a month, and they go here They volunteer their time. They don't just spend this hour or 2 hours, once or twice a month there. They read the packets, they go out there and they do what they need to do. And if you don't think that they're here for the people, they are here for the people. We have to hear the petitions as they come in. That's just our rules. And we try to follow our rules. So when people say that we didn't submit a FOIA request, that's something that we have to address. I'm sure you understand that. We do have a website, and I will tell you again that we post everything at AntiochIL.gov. If you have any questions, call the village. We are very diligent about that because we don't want to run into an idea where people aren't getting notice on things. I just want to be very clear about that because these are good people up there and they're trying to work really hard. And they want to take in the evidence and they make these people come back time and time and time again to get the information so the people out here can get their information so they can make an informed decision. Okay, and I just want to be very clear. No one wants to be adversarial with the people out there, or honestly the people out there. We're here to hear a case. We're here to hear a case. But when an accusation comes in that we're not following the rules that we have to follow, we have to defend that accusation. And I'm sure you understand that, just like you're defending your property rights. And you're saying, I want you guys to take a careful look at this. Well, in the same way, these people are up here working their time saying you guys aren't doing the right thing. So I hope you understand that.
Well, one thing I can say is I bug that man almost every day. Did you hear from Antioch yet? Did you hear from Antioch yet? 26. Yeah, I heard a respond. They said they're gonna send some over today. He's reached out. I could show you text after text. I probably drove the man insane. And being a retired police officer who also acted as in my capacity as a detective.
Yeah.
This isn't my first rodeo, okay?
You are diligent,
I'm diligent and,
just like the people up here.
well, hopefully,
Yeah.
you know, open your eyes. Every one of you up here wouldn't want this thing in your backyard. The lighting, 3,000 cars, come on, shove the thing south to 173. I don't know why you want to plop it right at the end of our street. We're not trying to be unreasonable. I want to see the Petersons get their money for their land. I know most of the Peterson family, they're great people. And you know what? Work with us on this. We're not saying don't do it, but push it. I don't know why you wouldn't push it all the way to 173 on a major state highway commercial corridor, but you want to plop it centered literally on our neighborhood.
So Mr. Esdale, I love what you're saying, if you don't mind, Mr.
I
Chairman.
mean, we're trying to be reasonable.
You're talking about solutions, right? You're talking about solutions. You're not just throwing accusations out there.
Right.
So what are your solutions? What are you asking them to do? They're right behind you. And I think they're trying to work with you guys for accommodation. So what are you asking them to do?
Earth berm, barrier, make sure that it's not gonna be the runoff from all these junker cars. It's not gonna poison our well. We're all on wells. There's no one on our street who isn't on a well. So
If they can address some of those questions right now, would that be helpful to you?
this immediate thing, no, because obviously we want to go through all the FOIA documents that we haven't been able to go through, and maybe some of the answers lie within there.
Well, then let me ask another question. Would you be offended if I asked them to address those questions that you said?
It wouldn't bother me in the least.
And I want to clear up one more thing and then I'll stop talking because I will agree with Mr. Mathewson about one thing. I said too many words tonight. The TIF district. So this is actually an incorrect statement of law and I have an ethical obligation to inform my client that this is not the right thing. For a TIF district, all the money actually does go exactly back to the village. It goes back to the village. That's the whole point of a TIF district. That when the increment comes in, it goes back to the village. It doesn't just get lost in the air or somewhere. It goes back into the.
Doesn't it go into?
It goes to development.
No, it doesn't. That's not what the statute
Have you
says.
litigated this one?
Yes, many of them.
I've gone to the Illinois Supreme Court. and I've got an
Congratulations.
ex- So don't tell me what tips are about.
He does suck.
And I don't know why you have become the board.
Is he the chairman or not?
You're
letting him-
I have an ethical obligation. I have an ethical obligation, Mr. I have an ethical obligation, Mr. Shaw.
Oh, come on.
You are wrong in your statement about.
I want to know that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Stop, or I'll ask you to be removed. Please sit down. Please sit down. I asked you to sit down. Please sit down.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
One more thing. I wasn't berating your client. I actually asked him to come up with solutions and then have the people back there address those issues that he brought up.
maybe I don't know a parade.
I don't think it's something that could
Okay.
get resolved tonight.
That's fair.
So hit the pause button and let's come back in January or February and revisit it when we're all a little more educated on it.
But would you be offended if they did address some of these things that you brought up?
I wouldn't be offended at all for anything. I don't get offended easily
Got it. Thank you, sir.
at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna answer some of the questions already brought up. So number one, for runoff and problems with the cars, we have BMPs. BMPs have been put in place on many of these projects over the years to filter those things out naturally. It does a much better job than a triple basin receiver for oils and runoff from mechanic shops and other places. Plus, they don't get monitored, they don't get checked, and then you have the problem that goes into your wetlands. So BMPs, and we've talked about it a few times tonight, they've added BMPs to this to help out with the runoff and things that could affect your wetlands and your water for your area. It's a very important, very good managed practice. It has been used for years and has been backed up by MCI, which is our Lake County management resource that we have to comply with. So that's how the basic practice is put together for that to happen. We've asked them to go above the standards, and they've done so. The same thing is going on with the lighting. The lighting, we ask for 0.5 at the edge of all the properties. If I put another handy foil out there in this location, which is part of our ordinance, it's gonna look a whole lot worse than what they're putting out there right now. You can disagree, and I respect your disagreement. But when you put a 500,000 square foot building with all those blinking green and red lights and have it running the same 3 shifts with noise inside the building, trucks, semis running around the building everywhere, it's a little bit different than having something that's only about 25 feet off the ground and has cars parked around it. So please understand that these are things that we've been discussing. This is what we've been going through throughout the entire process. We're taking your questions into effect for everything up here. Does anybody else have something else to add to the comments that have been made or need to be made from the public? Please come up and be sworn in if you haven't been. I believe so. I believe you're sworn in, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
State
you.
your name,
Morning.
please.
My name's William Bonigudi. I live off of one of the Peterson drives on the west side of Route 45. I want to thank the board for their time tonight. I'm coming a little bit late to the party, so I know there's a lot of discussion that's already gone. I just wanted to make 2 quick points tonight that concern me as an individual. One is the noise that could be coming. I'm no expert on this, but you talked about how there's different trucks and so forth with the bigger handy foils. I think, not knowing for sure, maybe they can answer. The cars that are going to be coming in are going to be probably coming in on car carrier type trucks for the majority of them coming and going. In my experience, those trucks can be rather noisy in and of themselves with ramps going up and down and the clunking and the clanking of the ramps. So I don't know how that would compare. I'm not a professional, but I have that concern that I hope is or has been addressed as far as the different type of noise from those types of trucks with that volume of cars. The second point I would like to make, it was touched on a little bit of those elevations. I do go down, even though I'm on the west side of 45, I go down. I use Peterson Drive often to visit some of my friends and neighbors. I also walk my dog and exercise down there through the 2 subdivisions. And I'd like to respectfully dispute the, for lack of better terms, that little video that was done from Google to show the perspective. Sure. The majority of that was done at the east dead end of Peterson, where it's much lower. The perspective is much different from the west end of Peterson. When you first come in and start traveling eastbound off of Route 45, you can see a lot more above and beyond the vegetation and trees and so forth that are already there. So those are just 2 quick points and concerns that I hope either have done or will be addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. parking and the unloading of the trucks is gonna be done on the east side of the building with semi parking there, I believe. Is that the location that you've set up for us? Go back to that slide. So it'd be on the east side of the building.
Maybe I'll take some of these questions.
Please do.
I've been sworn in, but
Steve Hudak, I'm the real estate development manager, at CarMax, 12,800 Tucko Creek Parkway, Richmond, Virginia.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go up to the screen, maybe.
It's kind of hard for us to hear you up there on the microphone.
So,
First, let's start with your specific question. What was the question?
The unloading and loading of your cars off the car carriers.
How about I work that in just a little bit of history about the project? And maybe it'll help some of the context with the audience, and the work that's been done from staff and from this board. So when CarMax first started looking at this market, we actually started with the site that's on the west side of the stream. And that was the property that we were negotiating for. And we came in and we sat down with Michael, and he was raising issues about what are the best options here. And he was pretty adamant, don't try it. That's not a site you want to come through here and try and get approval on. So based on his recommendation, we moved across the stream to the other site, and we started negotiating with Mr. Peterson. And as we're going through the process, Michael had other ideas. Now, the reason we're on the back of the site instead of the 173 is he was trying to hide our operation from the people driving on 173. You know, so we're on the part of the site because that's where we were directed to. So we're trying to, as a corporate citizen, we're trying to get feedback. Same way we had bioswales and all the other things that the board has told us about. We're trying to, you know, fit the puzzle pieces together for a win-win. So I think it was important to talk about that. With respect to the trucks and how the site functions, again, we're trying to be as sensitive as we can. The trucks are probably the noisiest part of the operation, so we've moved that as far east as we can. So the trucks come down Handy Foil, just like the trucks go to Handy Foil, and you go past where they make the right into their site, and you make an immediate right up ours. And all of our carrier wells are as far east on the properties we can get. So that's as unobtrusive an impact, I think, as you can get with respect to the distance from the neighbors, which, by the way, our buildings are 1,700 feet from the nearest residential. And back from 173, we're about 12 or 1,300 feet to our building. So we're trying to hide ourselves as best as we can.
Agreed.
So in my opinion, I think we're doing all we can to try and get this use to work here, which, as Bruce talked, it's permitted by right under the code, you know, so I don't think we're here trying to look for any special favors. We're actually trying to do things to make this work. Does that answer your question about the trucks? Yes, we're as far as we can get.
It does, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else with the public would like to come up and speak?
I like.
Please. Your name is?
Can I have this one more thing?
I have been sworn in.
Just one more statement. There's been a couple references to junk cars tonight.
Sure.
Some cars are old, some cars are new. So CarMax won't resell a car. You have a 2023 F-150 with a 6-inch lift kit. We would never resell that car. So vehicles like that are coming through here, as well as the 1972 Malibu that's coming through. So we get all kinds of cars, and the average price of cars going through the auction lot are about $10,000, $11,000 right now. So, I mean, on average, they're not all beaters. And our throughput on our auctions are 97%. So this isn't like a Manheim auction where they're all consignments and cars come there. If they don't sell this week at auction, they do it next week. They do it the following week, and they do. We're selling 97%. But if we don't sell them this week, next week that car is going through and it's going to get sold.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of focus on the wholesale operation here. That's actually about half the operation. There's also a reconditioning center here where we've got 200 plus employees turning wrenches and prepping cars to go out to retail centers.
Right.
We didn't talk about that. That's what I
Thank you. We talked about it previously, but thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Fleatro, 23 480 Grass Lake Road.
I'm good friends with Steve and Chuck and you know, something that dawned on me is when we seen this little Google presentation is I'd like to see it without the vegetation. The biggest impact for the neighbors is gonna be light pollution. And it's not from the photo cutoff. I'm sure the photometrics is perfect. But the minute that you get snow and salt in these parking lots, you're gonna get reflective light. And that reflective light puts a glow, which is gonna impact their properties. And so not considering berms, not considering property screening, you know, I'm sure if we went down there right now, you can see through, there's no vegetation. So that needs to be taken into serious consideration. These are where people live. This is not like somebody's business. This is where they go home at night, put their head down. I mean, they gotta get, you know, blinds to block the glow. So, and you know, the impact of that is probably best understood to people that live by Wilmot Mountain at night. You can go out miles and you can see that glow on the island. And when you fly, you can see that glow that reflects off the snow and reflects out a long way. So this is not BS about how the light's gonna impact. During the summer months, you know what, it's probably fine. Winter months, that changes. And being that we have a lot longer, darker hours, I think it needs to be something that they need to consider. I just don't think that little video they put together is genuine. I think that it should have been done in a way where it showed it without the vegetation. And then on a note separate from this, your attorney's adversarial position is wrong for this village. He sits there with his arms crossed. That is not the right approach for a village attorney. That's why this meeting got out of control. It's his position. Been involved in a lot of government. That would not be something that would ever be acceptable if I was on this board.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak from the public?
I was sworn earlier, and I do apologize. I'm very sorry.
I just don't want to be accused as a volunteer. I've been a part of this governing board and a commissioner for a long time. And I know everybody up here does their due diligence and it's not fair for you to make assumptions about what we have or haven't done. So
I do apologize.
I appreciate that.
I'm
Thank
very
you.
frustrated that, first of all, we're not very informed as the public of what's going on in our backyards. We have to find out from friends and other people in hearsay. And then the meeting gets posted late, times change, and we hear about this. It all trickles down. And it's very frustrating. Can you bring that site plan back up? The one thing we're not addressing is, I've been on a CarMax parking lot. I've walked a lot.
As if I.
If you pull any one of those cars back, you'll see every single one of them leaves a trace of oil. They say they go through reconditioning, they say they go through this stringent stuff, and they say they're gonna tell us everything that they possibly want to get there. But at the end of the day, you're gonna back those cars up, and you're gonna see oil, and who's gonna sit there and hold them accountable? Kenosha has a massive CarMax place, and every single time a car gets moved, there is oil there, and it rains, and it leaches. And if you look at their parking lot, it's massive, massive. There's gonna be 3,000 automobiles there? Telling me that none of your cars don't leak or have never leaked? And it goes through volumes and volumes of cars. They move so many cars. There's gonna be trucks in and out of there all the time. Saturday, I like to go out in the yard, play with my kid. I like to go to Pop's house, ride the train. We're gonna hear semi trucks in and out of there all the time. All the time. Is that the way I wanna raise my child? Around a corporate entity in my backyard. That's not why I moved to Antioch. That's not why I moved out there in that area of Antioch. I didn't move there to be over inundated with a company. I mean, I was scrutinized for my business, and we've done everything in our power to make it nice, clean, and comfortable for everyone else around us. This is not that. Go to the CarMax in Kenosha and just see how much traffic. There's people there all the time. They're coming in there trying to get offers on their car. And this is a wholesale place. They're gonna be bringing in stuff that nobody wants. And they're gonna be trying to ditch it, get rid of it, do whatever. Reconditioning site, that means there's gonna be massive amounts of toxics. They're gonna be cutting cars, doing something to them. I don't know what's going on behind the doors. We're not gonna know either if we let this happen. This is a corporation that's trying to get their way in somewhere. God bless this man back there trying to make some money. That's fine. Maybe you should sell it to somebody that actually cares about the community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who has anything to say? Did you get sworn in? Thank you. Say your name.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Olivia Santos. And everyone else. I reside on Peterson Drive South as well. I just want to first say thank you all for being here and thank you guys all for being here. 90% of people are here voluntarily, so time is valuable, and we are here because we care about something, whether it's you, individuals on the board, my neighbors, the people who live around the area. So in that essence, I want to just say that with humility and kindness to diffuse any kind of tension like this. Thank the CarMax personnel for also being here. The third time, apparently second time with us. I was here last time as well. So thank you for taking our questions seriously, and I continue to give you faith to take them seriously. To preface, some specific questions that I have that we are concerned about, my husband and I who reside in Peterson, is definitely the light pollution, the noise, and the aspect visually is a big concern as well. But the light pollution is huge and we can't see a good remedy towards that. So you mentioned how there's a 0-foot candle, but how it was reduced from 11%, but you didn't state the numbers of what it was reduced from. So I'd like to be told in layman's terms as a non-professional, and perhaps Mr. McCarthy, you can help determine that as the people's voice as well. Can you know how to read those individual like challenging light maps? What does that actually mean? What does the 0-foot lumen mean, and what does that reduction by 11% actually mean for what? How big is the bioswale going to be on the west side of this potential establishment? As stated, the bioswale on the north side, Crawford Road, is probably the substantial size that we need, and that bioswale is what, 23 feet tall. So, and the evergreens there, it's a berm, and the evergreens on there are mature, so they're anywhere from 6, 12, 15 feet tall. So asking for trees that are mature, natural to the indigenous landscape, preserve the aesthetics of our farms, if you're going to put something commercial like that, is really imperative as a homeowner there for the visual aesthetic. I think that a huge berm will really help the light pollution as well. If the berm is 20 or 30 feet tall and then we have beautiful trees on top, personally, as a homeowner, that changes the game as far as the light pollution. That can sincerely help. So I think that the height of the trees should also be a really big factor. And then my last thing was, there are pictures as well, right at the end of the road, you can absolutely see the current farm field that's on there with the red and green flashing lights that are at the handy foil. So their Google depiction that is just foliage is a little deceiving here. So as someone who walks the road daily just to get the mail, I live towards the east side of the road, almost the second house back. So you can absolutely see the farm field. So I would absolutely be able to see the 16-acre car lot and building. So again, foliage is imperative there. So I think that the consideration that Chuck has brought up about bringing it more towards 173, why isn't that a factor? Is there negative really connotations and moving the whole structure towards 173 as only residents around there? That would be ideal for our end. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to address the photometrics and a little bit of how we're dropping it to 11% and how it's looking for your photometrics, what that measurement entails to the 0 lumens at the edge of the property?
So I'm not gonna take the role of engineer. I'm gonna let my engineer say that. I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
One is, we did show you actual current vegetation, because we took pictures this afternoon. And there is enough vegetation that there's a significant screen already at the creek. So that's number one. Number two is, this could be 200,000 square foot buildings with loading docks on both sides. And we're lowering the impact of the property by putting a lesser impact facility on the site. There's no reason why somebody couldn't do a much greater, as was pointed out, much greater development with much more impact on the neighborhood And it's all approved. It was approved in 2007. So we should be here talking, actually, with all respect to Mr. Shaw, his comments were zoning comments that could have been raised at the time in 2007, but are inappropriate tonight. This has been vetted by not only staff, but outside engineers and everything from lighting, landscaping, site plan, detention pond, et cetera. So when somebody comes in and says, and I don't want to be disrespectful, you can't put up a 30-foot berm, you can't put up huge trees because the county says the water's got to get to the creek and we can't start stopping water from getting to the creek. We can make sure the water that gets to the creek is clean. And that's what BMPs are all about. So it doesn't matter how many cars are on the lot. It doesn't matter if they leak or they don't leak. They're not going to put oil into the water system because it's all going to be captured before it gets to the creek. Now let the engineer talk about light.
Well, to answer your question on how we get our percentages down, how these are calculated all, as I mentioned, I know it's very hard to see, but there's a marker point throughout what we call the customer employee area as well as the sales stage area. So we add up, can you zoom in on that at all? Probably not. Sure. If you were be able to see the higher foot candle light, which is typically caused by multiple lights, high density lights next to each other, those high numbers are on the eastern side of the property. And so we add all those numbers together in each area and we divide them to get an average. When we initially submitted our first photometric plan, there was a larger number for both averages on both customer parking lot and storage parking lot. We made our updates to this photometric plan and we did that same calculation. We ran all the averages for the foot candles, and that's how we got a reduction of 11% and 20%. Our initial photometric plan did fall under code. So we were under code initially. This was us trying to amend some of the concerns.
We requested it from up here.
Help stay at the mic.
Excuse me, if you're gonna say something, you have to come up to the mic.
So just
Trying-
just to continue this thought, maybe
Yes,
make it
sir.
a little clearer. Customer employee lot. So on this site plan, that's this.
Or you have to say that.
The customer parking lot is on the south portion of the sales staging lot where Steve is pointing.
On the former submission, there's an average luminosity from this area.
Yeah, on the former submission, there was an average luminosity from the customer parking lot area.
The revised submission, same area,
Revised submission, same area,
is reduced that much.
was reduced by 20%, as I was indicating.
The other one,
So if you go up there and look, you
Is
can see
this.
each like marker.
The dots.
Yeah, and it has a booking number based off of the amount that is portrayed in that area. If you go towards the middle of the site, those numbers are much lower because it's not, we don't have our security fencing and lighting as well as the gates. You see on the, they just look like blobs, but those are our gates right side there.
So the most minimal lighting on the west side? you
Correct.
say, And the most.
On the eastern side, yes, exactly.
Will there be light lumen effects, hitting the end of our drive?
No, and even if you look, that's what the
There's
zero,
no
the
light
0.0 foot
hitting our
candles.
drive? We won't be able to see any light. You can guarantee.
So, let me try and explain. And I'm not a lighting expert, I know enough to be dangerous. But the way the lighting plans are created is, if you put a meter on the ground and you took a reading there from the lights, that's what your lumen, or in our case, our foot candle readings would be. We actually do our tables 4 feet off the ground. As if you're sitting in a car, I think that's typical for the industry. So when you have 0 foot candles, it's if you put your meter on the ground, you're not gonna read any light there.
You saying it's dark?
On the ground, you're not gonna get a light reading.
how tall are your poles?
I think on this site, we're 28 feet.
Excuse me, we're not gonna go back and forth.
Sorry.
Okay, so if you have something that you want to add, you come up and you can speak into the mic so we can have it in record, okay? Go ahead and continue with the explanation.
So I think that the misnomer, I think the question you asked is, will I see lights over there? Right? So once you get to like where the detention pond is on our site, the light reading at 4 feet is 0. But if you're 1,700 feet away where your homes are and you look up, will you be able to see that a light is on? The answer is yes, you'll be able to see that a light is on. But all codes are written that you measure at property lines, and the 0-foot candles, particularly on the west side of the site, the zeros start at the pond, and they continue for a couple hundred feet to the property line, to our property line, and then there's the farm next to us, and then it's you guys. So, I don't want to misstate anything, but
Right,
that's.
so
that's me.
to give you guys a little bit of a history on how we got to our so-called ordinance for lighting. We had the restaurant that used to be on 173 and Tiffany Road. And then it turned into a car dealership. This was about 20 years ago. The car dealership was across the street here, moved over there. Pittman. And they turn on their lights, and absolutely everywhere in Antioch, coming off of 173 in the highway, driving to the town, you could see that everywhere. So we had to rewrite the ordinance, change everything, and then everything changed to LEDs. So we changed the ordinance so that we now are addressing the LEDs and how we can tone them down and keep them more respectful for all the neighbors. Everything is now in a fixture that's 90 degrees down. It doesn't protrude out, it doesn't extend out. That's more like infiltration tube people everywhere. So it's 90% down, and then we control it by the amount of lumens that are available. Yes, you're gonna see light. Like we have at the dealership that just got put in a Kia, they have light. But the light that's there is very toned down, very respectful, not too much like we had at the dealership over on Tiffany 173. Across the street from Menards, you have the new trans truck. We've received complaints and have complaints with their lighting that they're doing there into the evening. Their lights are projected on a 45 out everywhere. And you can see that all the way into Lindenhurst. So there are things that we have to correct. We've changed our ordinance so that we can correct them. And we will watch this for all of us to make sure we keep the light down for the residents. Okay? That's why we put this in place. That's why we're making changes so we can adapt and make it better for all the residents. Okay, is there anything else that anyone else would like to say? Ralph, you want to say anything else? Anyone else from the public?
Sure. Mayor.
Mr. Martinez, yes, you can.
Director Gargan, I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe for council, Goldsmith. We want to meet solutions, right? Right now, we're talking, and it was something that was brought up in previous meetings about a 6-foot privacy fence wrapped around the whole 16-acre perimeter. Is there an ability to go from 6-foot request to 10, 12, 18, something again to block more of the site? Is there a way to negotiate that tonight?
Well, most of our commercial fences can be 8 feet. We do allow that 8 feet by code. I don't know if there's precedent going up to 12 feet. That's something I'm not sure I can work with the applicant on that, whether to consider it, whether that would address all the sightline issues or concerns about sightline issues. But there may be some parameters to look at fence size, privacy fence.
We have Council Goldsmith in good faith say that you will work with him in possibly increasing the height of those fencing around the perimeter.
I can work with Mr. Goldsmith and their whole planning team to see how that can be addressed. If
Thank you.
That's that.
I only see it as a necessary situation to do on the west side, which would be affecting everybody who's here speaking. Everything else is blocked on the east side by a building.
I think it's actually blocked by the landscaping, and when the landscaping along the pond matures, that's gonna have more effect than putting a fence around that site. But we would be willing to go to 8 feet on that west side, just as an accommodation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We've discussed this to ad nauseum, there's no doubt. We've gone over a lot of the parameters. I definitely want staff to work with the applicant in every regard to block any intrusion that we can from the residents on the west side of the property. Like I said, we do want to eliminate all the wall packs on that west side of the building. So that would help out tremendously. Wall packs are a fixture that goes on the side of the building, and it does project light directly out towards to the west side. That would help greatly for you. So I would entertain a motion. Do we need three separate motions? Three separate motions, one for site plan review, one for preliminary plat, and one for final plat. It's to your.
So Mr. McCarty, before we get to the motion, and I have to step out for a minute, so maybe I missed it, but I heard from residents, that perhaps we were gonna have 3,000, vehicles on this site at a time. Was that addressed? Or, I know we've talked about it in prior meetings, but
Yes, I mean, that was discussed.
I'm for the benefit of the people that, took time to come here. I wonder if we could maybe review that, how many vehicles we see coming through for one of these auctions.
For one of their auction sites. If you want to address that quickly for your.
Ask it again.
So
How many vehicles?
I heard from concerned residents tonight about 3,000 vehicles at a time in one of these auctions. And I know we've discussed this previously, so I just want clarification of a typical auction on a site like this. How many vehicles are we talking about?
So I think that 3,000.
And I understand, like, from previous meetings, a lot of it is done online. Correct? Or,
You're talking about how the auction functions. All right,
that's right.
Let's break it into pieces. So we've got two primary uses also. We've got the reconditioning use and we've got the auction use. And I'm hoping they can find a couple of numbers for me. 3,000 feels right for total storage volume. Doesn't mean 3,000 cars will be auctioned a week. I think the volume of the auction is much less. 100 or 1,000 a week, I think, are what we would auction. But what would happen is, as cars are traded from around the region, they would come here, you could get run through an auction. You're gonna store them on the site until that auction happens. It takes about 3 or 4 days in advance of the auction day to get everything staged and ready. So let's say it's 1,000 cars, let's keep it simple. They're getting staged, they're getting ready through the auction lanes. But there's still cars getting traded in our location. So you've got the next week's supply coming in. Of the auction vehicles, I'm spitballing, half of them, maybe 2/3 of them are the auction vehicles. The reconditioning center is getting cars in, and we're gonna recondition them. I think we're accused of not reconditioning cars. But we do, each car goes through about a 12-hour reconditioning process, to check tread depths, and check brakes, 145-point inspection. And those vehicles are running through the reconditioning building. They've got their own storage space on the site for that. So you sort of have these two bifurcated areas, but I think the total step numbers. You look it up still. And for us, that's not a traditional parking, bumper to bumper, probably 5 deep with drive lane, so you can get cars in and out without moving more than 2, and then another pod of bumper to bumper cars, and so we've got these pods around the site. That's the way we operate.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I have a question. With this amount of traffic of cars, is CarMax providing the car haulers to pick these cars and move these cars, or are these gonna be a lot of independent contractors driving their own trucks, hauling their cars around? And then if that's the case, who's checking those trucks coming in and out of our areas that have leaks and oil leaks and stuff like that? Are you telling these people they can't come in if they're leaking, if they have issues with their trucks? I mean, how is that being addressed? Because there's gonna be a lot of semis in and out, lots of semis.
Thank you.
So in a retail store, we would see independent truckers. So if somebody, or the Kenosha store, if somebody at the Kenosha store saw a car in Phoenix and they wanted it delivered here, that would go on an independent truck, it would get delivered to the sites. These are more corporate centric, we control the operations. So many of the semis are gonna be CarMax owned, CarMax driven. If CarMax isn't doing 100% of the volume, we have regional partners that are gonna do it. So it's gonna be a much smaller group of the same vendors bringing cars to the site. So on the reconditioning side, they're bringing cars to the site, they're going in, they're getting reconditioned, they're going back on carriers and back out. On the auction side, it's still either CarMax or it's the regional suppliers bringing cars to the site. I have to imagine, we have an auction, so we're selling vehicles. So, and we haven't talked about it tonight, but we've talked about it in the past. You've got to be a licensed dealership in the state of Illinois. You could probably be in the state of Wisconsin also, and come bid on cars here, but you have to be licensed and you have to be pre-approved by CarMax. So those folks that are coming and buying cars, once they have purchased the car, they're their vehicles, and they take them off site in a host of different ways. Sometimes they come with 10 drivers and they drive them back to wherever they're taking them. Sometimes they're coming on jerrycans and just puts one on the back. Sometimes it's two on the back, and sometimes they're bringing the big car carriers to get their cars off the site. So it's a myriad of ways that those get taken off site. Those are the general trucking scenarios.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, and then I'll be done. I'm sorry. Will these trucking carriers be during normal business hours? And then what are normal business hours? And if they're not, are they picking up at night? You know, is it gonna cause a traffic jam during the day? Because we're already getting a big influx on 173 of traffic. I mean, I don't know, a lot of you have lived around here a long time. You used to be able to get on 173, you get to the tollway in 5 minutes. Now it's more like 15 minutes. You can only imagine if we have 200 trucks moving all day long. Now we're talking 35, 40 minutes, you know, just because we bring something in. Is this happening at night where it's convenient for everybody? And if it is happening at night, we got noise to do with stuff.
Thank you.
So, volume of traffic comment. The traffic study was submitted with the application. It's been reviewed from an engineering perspective. The existing intersection has chosen a degradation of its level of service. If I'm remembering correctly, the engineer can speak to that. With respect to deliveries of vehicles, yeah, they would be expected to be 24/7 deliveries.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just add, with the traffic study, we've been extremely conservative in our approach, assuming the development of CarMax, but also future development of the lot to the south of this property, as well as the lot to the south of Handy Foil. So we've taken extra precautions, coordination with the village to make sure that the level of service of the Gregory and 173 intersection still maintains, you know, with limited or no impact from this development.
Thank you.
I'm gonna add one last thing, just quick, simple math. Take 3,000 cars, your average car carrier carries approximately around 12 cars. It's 250 semis. I think it's gonna have an impact on our traffic. Let's not be foolish. And the noise.
Ms. Carson, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, regardless of how we decide today, can Attorney Vasselli explain the process for the people?
The recommendation, so this is an administrative hearing. So, and then thank you all for your time and patience. This is an administrative hearing. This is not a quasi judicial hearing like a special use permit or a zoning matter, as the council said. It is where the box is checked basically to make sure that goes on there. The site plan gets recommended by this body to go to the larger body, the village board, which has meetings on every second, let me rephrase, every second and fourth Wednesday, except for the first meetings in January, which will be the 15th and the 29th. Yeah, so I don't mean to digress, we've all been here long enough, and thank you all very much, but I just want to be very clear because our meetings, we pushed them back one week in January. So it's, I believe the 15th and the 29th for the village board meeting. So a recommendation comes from this body. This is just a recommending body, and that goes to the village board for approval or denial, or approval with modifications on that recommendation. This is an administrative function. This isn't like a special use permit or a text amendment or a variance. So it's a little bit different than your normal zoning function. And again, normally we meet on the second and fourth Wednesdays. We cancel this. The second Wednesday would be, yeah, there's no meeting on Christmas Eve, sorry, everyone. But there will be meetings on January the 15th and 29th. Because we're not, obviously it's a federal holiday on January 1st. So I hope that helps out, and just to make sure, and I also want to be very clear, the village's zoning board meets every first Wednesday, except in January of 2025, when it's the 8th, so it'd be the second Wednesday. So I just don't want anybody to not think that we're trying to hide meetings or anything like that. That's when we meet, and they are on our websites.
Okay.
I think Mr. Jeremy wants to add something.
There has, just for the record, because I don't want there to be any misrepresentations or confusion, potentially subject to whatever the planning commission basically recommends this evening. There has been a request by council that this matter be discussed potentially next week, the village board meeting at the cow. That's been a request by council.
And the cow is?
Committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole.
So
Committee of the whole, we can't make any decisions, but they bring it up for
It could
discussion.
be continued to January, but there is the potential, subject to the village, the mayor's authorization or approval, he sets agenda, that it could theoretically be on, subject to what the planning commission recommends, could be on the cow committee for just discussion, not approval, discussion only next week.
So the cow meeting is the same time, same date as the village board meetings, but it happens generally after our village board meetings. We do our regular business, and then we go into what's called committee of the whole, and it's called more of an open forum or discussion time for people to talk about outstanding issues for the village.
And I think it's just important to know that you can speak during public comment, but not during the cow, correct?
Actually, while you're normally correct in all things, Madam Commissioner, that is not correct. It's just most people normally give their public comments during the regular board meeting, but you can actually speak at either or both.
Okay.
But thank you.
I just wanna make sure, cause want the people to say their piece.
Okay, I will ask for a motion for approval or denial. 3 separate motions. Site plan approval, preliminary and final plan. Sure.
Michael, so was there a specific reason why staff or whoever made the recommendation for the larger building to be pushed back off of 173?
Yeah, I think staff from the get-go, we talked with the applicant, we had concerns. I know there was a lot of discussion about concerns about the Antioch Corporate Park in some ways is our entrance gateway into the village. We thought there'd be an opportunity to push the property back to provide more opportunities for landscaping. And then also, but more importantly, also providing other economic development opportunity on 173. Again, we haven't really discussed it tonight, but there is an additional lot. And we hope to attract another light industrial user to that property facing 173. So that was the planning reasoning behind trying to push this development back.
I'll entertain a motion. David also, up to you.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the site plan review of the CarMax distribution and auction center subject to the stipulations. Do I need to read them all?
Say
In the report?
staff stipulation.
Staff stipulations, and this is PZB 24-10.
Yes, I'll second it, but also notate that on the east.
I'm sorry, I forgot that part. Yes.
Roll call. Fingers are getting worn out.
Campoco,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Mish,
Yes.
Madigan,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes. And a motion on preliminary.
So I'll make a second motion, recommending approval of the final plat for the subject site subject
Preliminary plat.
preliminary plat. Sorry, Mr. McCarty. With the, stipulations set forth by the village. And again, it's PZB 24-10.
I'll make the third motion, for the.
Yeah, I need a second for this.
Second.
Oh, second, sorry.
Roll call.
Campoco,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Mish,
Yes.
Madigan,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes. I'll entertain a motion for final plat.
I'll make a motion for the, PCB 24-10 for the final plat, according to stipulations outlined by staff.
Second.
Roll call.
Campoco,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Mish,
Yes.
Madigan,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
McCarty,
Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for all your comments. And I hope that it helps with everything that's being done to make this as soft as possible for you. As harmful to the residents and. I think I'll go here.
Start with a new.
Second.